County Commission to order. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, if you would all join me in that.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Nolte?
Here.
Commissioner Withington?
Here.
Commissioner Lawson? Here. Commissioner Wagner?
Here.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Here.
Commissioner Thompson? Here. Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
That brings us to approval of the agenda. Is there a motion for the approval of tonight's agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
Motion has been made for the approval of this afternoon's agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, you're recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Wagner?
Aye.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson? Yes. Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson? Yes. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Nolte?
Yes. I'm sorry, you wouldn't.
Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, just a knee-jerk reaction. Very well, that brings us to public comments. Are there any comments from the public, from departments, or from any elected officials? Yes, I'll go ahead and give you what the drill is, and then we'll go ahead and get started on that. When you're making public comments, please come up to the podium. There is a light at the base of the microphone. Make sure that is green. If it's not, push the button. Please speak clearly and directly into the microphone. State your name for our audio recording. And you can kind of queue up if you want to there a little bit, but we'll go ahead and bring people forward. One thing I do want to mention is that these are meant to be public comments, and commissioners are not necessarily going to be engaging. This is for you to be able to speak to us, with just what you want to tell us. So we appreciate your comments, and please come on up to the front, and we'll go ahead and get started.
Hello, Jackie Thorstensen, Clay County citizen, property owner, taxpayer, airport tenant, certified flight instructor, air transport pilot with type ratings on the Boeing 737, 727, and the Embraer Air 145.
I'm sorry, could you speak just a little bit more?
Sure.
There you go.
I'm an AOPA member, Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, and the designated Midwest National Air Center Volunteer Airport Safety Network representative for AOPA. I'm here today to address the commissioners and make it a public record my concerns for the Midwest National Air Center, or MNAC for short, otherwise also the Clay County Airport, or referred to with the ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization, four-letter identifier KGPH. I would like to thank the Clay County Administrator, Diana Wright, for the budget workshops that were recently presented at each of the commission meetings. They were very informative, and it helped make me better understand our county government. And although a presentation was never made for the airport, the takeaway is that the airport was profitable enough to support itself and possibly other county endeavors. I want to thank the Deputy County Administrator Facilities for meeting with me on January 4th without an appointment and generously sharing an hour of time, then meeting with me this morning and hearing my grievances and hopes for a more cohesive and interactive future between that office, the Airport Advisory Board, and the next airport manager, and not least, but also the tenants and users of Midwest National Air Center. With recent lack of information and communication, it has become clear that there was a need to keep the airport community informed. I have taken it upon myself to begin forming a tenant association. I am working toward and am loosely forming the association with any airport users that would like to assist, along with the guidance and mentorship of Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. You have copies of snapshots. Have they received that? Okay, these are snapshots that I made from the airnav.com, AOPA.org, flightplan.com, and the 4Flight app. All are public use websites or apps that pilots and the public use every day. There are multiple other websites and apps with the same information. I just chose these four as examples because I'm more familiar with them. The information I want you to notice and be aware of, I highlighted on each of these website and app snapshots. It is the Clay County Commission. is listed as the owner. Most are aware that MNAC is a Clay County airport, but it is clearly presented, and listing the Clay County Commission as being the owner of our public use airport. I realize that the Commission must delegate the management of the airport, but what has been or appears to be lacking is any real involvement to change the recent downward spiral of and destruction of years of efforts to grow the airport business with fuel sales, ways to increase public awareness and appreciation for the freedom of flight and for air traffic. Fuel sales and hangar rents mean immediate cash flow. Public awareness and appreciation mean support. Air traffic means landings on which numbers are used for funding and grants. If everything were going well at the airport, I wouldn't be speaking this afternoon or concerned. My late father was a Braniff and Southwest Airlines captain. My brother has been chief pilot and director of operations for a Part 121 air carrier. My former husband, a retired Navy commander, aviator, airline captain, and currently at the FAA Kansas City Regional Office. I was flying airplanes from the age of 15 before I could legally drive an automobile. My significant other and I have an aircraft based at Midwest National Air Center. My family and my life has evolved around airports and aviation. When an airport is managed well and running well, I don't give it a second thought. As an American, I actually take it for granted. Until now, I have never gotten involved in airport business or politics, but all that has recently changed with what I have learned in each day at Midwest National Air Center. As I'm going to quote a couple of you guys. As Commissioner Lawson put it on January 25th meeting at 1 hour and 25 minutes into the meeting, she said, "Ultimately, it falls on our back when things are not right." Well, it is not right at Midwest National Air Center. The Clay County Airport is in crisis by past poor decisions of airport manager selections and indecisions of the present. The Midwest National Air Center has been a revolving door of airport managers. Jet A fuel sales and traffic are down because those aircraft are no longer choosing Midwest National Air Center. In the past, I did not think anything when I saw a jet at the Midwest National Air Center, but now it gets my attention. It's almost like, oh, look, a rare butterfly. The airport has been described as dead and not likely to be revived by one Beechcraft Premier captain that I got to speak with this past Saturday evening. The pilot dropped his charter guest off, then took a few moments to talk to the three of us pilots that were in the terminal building, then quickly departed. I learned that in the past, this jet aircraft was based at our airport, KGPH, but left September 5th this past year and did not return because of already declining services and poor communications with the most recent airport manager hire. The hangar that the Beach Premier was occupying at Midwest National Air Center is vacant and no longer collecting the monthly revenue of $2,400 plus the lost fuel sales. On this particular arrival, the aircraft would have been fueled spending another $2,400. Instead, that aircraft is now based at Lee's Summit and went on to fuel there. The captain also manages other aircraft that were based at Midwest National Air Center and are now at Lee's Summit. I also learned that in the corporate pilot community, Midwest National Air Center has been described as the Typhoid Mary of airports. Just avoid, stay away. Before the captain of the Beach Premier departed, he stated at least twice he would not bring the aircraft he manages back to the airport. I challenged the captain, would he come back when we get another airport manager? His reply quickly was, no way, not with the lay managers the county has been hiring. I asked if there could be any exceptions. The captain replied that he would return if they would make a previous interim airport manager the airport manager and remove the airport from the departments it's under right now. Clay County had a capable and proven interim airport manager for 6 months, from January to July this past year. Even though the interim manager had applied, they were passed over. The same county employees again applied for the current open position, but it is likely to again be passed over. I'm aware that as many as 23 letters of reference and support for the former interim airport manager were written and received by the county. Those letters were written by a very diverse group of intelligent and more than well-qualified persons. The writers of those reference letters are supporters of Midwest National Air Center and have invested their time and discretionary earnings with the county. Those letters should be validated as the valuable reference letters that they are. Instead, I was told that the airport manager position would not be awarded on popularity. And I put those words in air quotes because that is the word that was used and is a word and phrase of life and a life left behind in high school. To believe that those letters were written for popularity would be insulting to those writers that are your constituents and reflect on them as shallow. In response to asking about the letters written, I keep hearing and seeing the same sing-song phrase of fair hiring practices in response to those letters. What I'd like to counter with, what about responsible management practices? The airport has been reduced to less operating hours than a bank, and while I understand that will be corrected as soon as staff is hired and trained, our airport is essentially operating with one trained lineman. While we are all grateful for that lineman, he is only one person. The airport should have at least 2 linemen on duty during all business hours. Additionally, we need to improve the services and have O2 and nitrogen available. Our airport has embarrassingly fallen down a slippery slope. Yes, we have an airport with a nice 5,000-foot plus runway, but unless one lineman is there, there is nobody available to fuel. There are jets and turbine aircraft that use Midwest National Air Center as a regular fuel stop and always believed that Clay County Airport would have its usual hours and always be there to service their aircraft. Our airport has left those aircraft and pilots with some tough and uncomfortable decisions when they landed and there were no services available. But before I make it all bad, I will say that upon visiting the airport terminal this last Monday afternoon, I met 2 new employees that hopefully their learning and training curves will be short, and airport management reputation and integrity damage has been done. The damage will likely take a long time to recover from. The word is out. Clay County has left pilots, aircraft, and their customers hanging. Of course, we all know that nobody is irreplaceable, but quite possibly the only person that is detailed enough with follow-through that can go back and find the company's dispatchers and possibly pilots to reach out and do damage control is the former interim airport manager. Our airport is the first impression and face for many passengers and aircraft that travel to or through the Liberty, Kearney, Excelsior, Kansas City area. Some are high net worth individuals and could bring their dollars and many opportunities and possibilities. But no matter who they are all diverse and have a reason and a need for the airport, and the airport reflects the owner, Clay County Commission. Presiding Commissioner Nolte, I want to quote you from January 18th meeting at 2 hours, 23 minutes. You said, we have a big county to run. Well, we have a big asset here, and I believe it has been a profitable part of Clay County. Truly, it is a wonderful piece of infrastructure and real estate that is poised with overwhelming potential to be a major part and a future for generations to come. Properly managed, our airport is integral to attracting businesses and individuals for quality growth and make Clay County the best and most desirable county in the Kansas City area. It has already been designated as an official reliever airport for MCI, which I believe this designation makes it eligible for additional types of funding. Additionally, I want to remind everyone here that we all have sacrificed in one way or another. We recently had a 2-month closure during the best flying weather in September and October this past year for a $4 million runway resurfacing project. Talked to representatives from Burns McDonnell, talked to the FAA and people in the know. Without the guiding hand of the former interim airport manager, the project likely would not have materialized. The airport is a very specialized asset that comes with more than a few challenges in dealing with all the users and tenants that each have a large personal stake in the success of the airport. The airport needs to be prioritized. Midwest National Air Center comes with a history of airport manager position being a revolving door. I ask that the best proven and capable applicant that is already a Clay County employee with most clearances and background checks complete not be overlooked. Each day we wait or postpone filing the airport manager position negatively affects the airport. The airport is a very specialized place of operation with high net worth aircraft equipment and is highly regulated with a very steep learning curve that comes with the politics of Clay County. For the county to move the one person from the airport that knew more about the airport than anyone in the county flies in the face of responsible management practices and good decision making. As an airport tenant that had networked for the common thoughts and opinions of its users, with most of us being Clay County citizens, I'm proposing that this one time, our letters, our voice, our presence, and our valuable collective knowledge that likely exceeds 1,000 years of experience in aviation be validated, and the decision be made to appoint the former interim airport manager as airport manager. Lastly, I'm also proposing that the Airport Advisory Board and future tenant association have a real and active role in reviewing the top 3 applicant packets for the future airport manager openings, along with 1 position each from the advisory board and the tenant association for the interview. I want to thank you for allowing me to speak and share my perspective. I hope you each will seriously consider what has been proposed as the will of the airport users and your constituents. Before I close, a reminder that it is the Clay County Commission that is publicly listed as the owner of the airport. You got the 2023 budget settled for the time being and very important improvements for our Sheriff's Department. Please don't kick this can down the road and give away your responsibility under the guise of we don't get involved in staffing, because in this instance, the public record states the owner is Clay County Commission, not county administrator or any one designated by the administrator. The quickest way to get the airport on the right track is to do the right thing and hire the most proven and capable applicant. There's a couple of us here from the airport, and I would like to introduce John Hewitt. He's a retired 737 Vanguard Airlines pilot and former lineman at Midwest National Air Center to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. By the way, did you have a copy of this for our staff, of the document that was passed out? Okay, go on, make sure staff had a copy of it. Thank you very much. And yes, next person who would care to speak, whether that gentleman or whoever, please come up to the microphone.
Well, I don't have anything to read to you, so you're just going to have to listen to my thoughts as best as I can pull them out of my head. But we have several professional pilots here today that are airport tenants, have airplanes at the airport. I'm retired. I don't fly anymore, but like Jackie, I started flying before I started driving, so it's a long time ago. And I worked my way right on up through and did the airline thing and flew numerous corporate jets. And so I've got a little background in airport operations, is what I'm trying to say. And we have a situation up there at the airport that has gone completely south. And for an example, we got our last manager, who had a somewhat fictitious resume that we found out later, crashed and burned in very short order. I don't think it was 6 months or somewhere in that neighborhood. And because the person came in wanting to wave his arms at everybody and not do his job description. So he was handing it off to none other than the previous interim airport manager. I'm not supposed to name names, I understand. So, connect the dots, if you will. And so all his responsibility was being laid off on the person who could really do the job. And she was removed. And we're baffled because she was doing a great job. Now, to back up just a little bit so you understand where I'm coming from, I've got a fair amount of experience with that airport. In my retirement years, I chose to be a lineman. And I did it for 15 years, doing what a lineman does at an airport. That's a refueler and deals with airplanes. And I was an airplane guy, so I loved it. And but that was the extent of it. But I watched down through time the different management that we had. And some of it was pretty good back 10 years ago, 10 years ago, pretty good. And to give you an idea, the operations we had 5 to 10 years ago, because I was working there every day, 40 hours, up at 6, there at 7, on my shift and involved. We had common 5 fairly major jet or turboprop operations each day, and they were all happy to be there. Coast to coast, many airplanes can't make the stretch, and we were the preferred airport in the Midwest for a period of time for those operations to make us their stop. That's a big deal. That's a lot of fuel, and we also had a team that was happy to be there and worked well together most of the time. And so I've seen when we had what you might call a heyday at our airport, where it was, and it's a beautiful airport. If you ever have a chance to fly in and out of there, you'll be quite impressed with the runway and the facilities there. They have good equipment. There's a lot positive about the airport, but they took away the one person that really knew what she was doing. Connect the dots. That shouldn't have happened because she wanted to be there. Okay, I'm just telling you, that's where we are. We do not understand why that is. And so regardless of who shows up to apply for the airport manager position, regardless of their credentials, it's still going to take them a period of time, probably 6 months to a year, to come up to speed and get the train going again. And yet we have a loyal county employee that's been around for a long time who knows how to do it right now and wants to be there. So we're baffled. We don't get this. So in support of Jackie, who's really trying to get the point across, I want to just say that we have a very solvable situation on very short order, and we don't understand why it's not happening. So I want to make you all aware of that. That's why we're here. And I hope that you all will look into this with some consideration and see what you think. You know, you all have a bearing on county business, and so we want to put that ball in your court and let you consider it. And so that's really all I have to say. I don't know if anybody else wants to speak. Would you like to say something? Okay. This is Gary McDaniel.
Go ahead, now, because you were introduced, but go ahead and state your own name so that
Oh,
it's...
I'm sorry.
No, that's, I should have mentioned that
Okay.
earlier. Please go
I
right
should have
ahead.
said that right up front. My name's John Hewitt, and I was a former county employee for 15 years at the airport.
Thank you.
This is Gary McDaniel, just a little nugget for you. When I was a little kid, that littler kid taught me every rating I have. He was the secret to my success in aviation. So this is a real deal. He flew, well, let's see, some high-profile people. Who did you fly to? Madagascar? Anyway, in a big G4 jet. So he's a real deal pilot, and he's retired like I am. Has a small airplane at a hangar in the airport. And let me introduce my friend, Gary McDaniel.
Thank you. If you go ahead and state your name also. I realize
Sure,
the introductions are there, but that's for the audio. We need to get
I
your name
understand, yes.
actually.
Gary McDaniel, a hangar tenant at the airport, AOPA, Aircraft Owners Pilot Association member, 18,000-hour corporate pilot. Most of my flying was around the Kansas City area. For a few years, we had a hawker based out at KGPH with a company I flew for. A Pepsi bottler at the time, and bought a lot of fuel, a lot of jet fuel from Frank back in those days. Now a hangar member. So the point to all that is, and I'll be done here real quick, is I've been to a lot of, having been a corporate pilot, I've been to a lot of general aviation FBOs from sea to shining sea. And I can tell within 5 minutes of what kind of FBO I'm dealing with, just because I've dealt with good ones, bad ones, great ones, medium ones, all over the map. So I kind of know what they look like. And you, as a flying in your jet, you're offloading your people. Sometimes a quick turn, you're trying to get some gas, you're trying to get to the West Coast, you're trying to get to Aspen before the sun goes down, and you need a quick turn. And when you get a pro FBO that does that, boy, that just sticks in your head, we're going back there. Also, when the word gets out in the aviation community that some place has gone downhill, man, it spreads like wildfire. The aviation community is tight-knit, small group. Everybody talks to everybody. And when a thing goes downhill, it is evident to the whole aviation community in no time at all. So anyway, I won't take up much more of your time. You've got some real talent out there, some competent talent, some willing talent, and able talent. It's right in front of you. It would be quick and easy, and we look forward to working with her again. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to address the commission on that or any other issue? Very well, seeing none, that will move us to immediate action. We have 3 items. Yes, ma'am. I think, let me go ahead and because there's some specific sunshine law considerations for ourselves, but okay. Yeah, I mean, certainly afterwards, you're welcome to, but the interaction might well constitute an issue. And if anybody has any questions about that, I would defer to the counselor's opinion on that. In fact, would you like to just throw that out there, Mr. Counselor, just so it's there for a general consideration?
Sure. I mean, generally, public comments are for the public to address the commission. They're typically not an invitation to be interactive, because in that situation, that's not noticed, whatever that topic is unknown to us and not noticed up. So the rest of the public doesn't have an awareness that their county commission is discussing it. What we would typically do is set something on say a discussion item in a future agenda if it was warranted.
Now, that does not limit any commissioner or any citizen from interacting later on. It's just during the course of this public meeting that we have that limitation, but certainly at any point other than that, interaction is certainly appropriate and welcome. Administrator, we have our immediate action items, and I believe there are 3 under that heading.
Yes, there are 3 items on your agenda for immediate action. The first is commission meeting minutes from January 4th, a 3 p.m. meeting, and January 11th, at the 6 p.m. meeting. Also, we have Resolution 2023-36. It is approving the 437-9 form, which is with the Missouri Department of Revenue. This is a requirement to add our new commissioners on this form to the state. We also have for your consideration Resolution 2023-40, approving invoice payments for Clay County from January 20th through January 26th. There were 44 invoices, and the total amount is $81,192.96.
Is there a motion related to our immediate action agenda?
Yes, thank you. I move for approval of commission meeting minutes of January 4th and January 11th, 2023, as well as 2023-36 and 2023-40.
Motion has been made for the approval of the 3 items under our immediate action listing. Are there any questions, comments from the commission? Seeing none, you're recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Wagner.
Aye.
Commissioner Withington.
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson. Yes. Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes. That brings us to our regular agenda. First on that agenda is 2023-41. Administrator?
Yes, thank you, Commission. Before we get to Resolution 2023-41, last week at the Commission meeting, there were a lot of questions by the Commissioners regarding penalties and interest when it comes to delinquency and taxes, and also what is the notification process for delinquencies. So prior to getting to these 2 requests, with your indulgence, I've invited the county auditor and the county collector to come forward and give you just a brief overview about penalties and interest, how they're calculated and where that comes from, and then also what is our notification process for delinquencies.
Hello, Victor Hurlbert, Clay County Auditor. So yeah, as the administrator mentioned, we just wanted to give a brief overview because in the last meeting, a lot of questions came up about what the interest would mean when you're delinquent on your property tax payments. And, the form indicates the idea of interest. And I think it's just important for us to outline what those fees are and also really clarify, though these fees are, significant and meant to deter late payments, it's not, technically interest in the sense that it compounds on a, exponential basis. And so really to explain it, first you have what we call the interest category derived from statute, and essentially it is an 18% fee. The statute says you can't go more than 2% a month, however, if they do pay it off late. And so the way the county has interpreted that is to get to 18%, we do 1.5% per month. Please note that this is on the taxes due, so it's a constant amount that's added each month. So it's not compounded in a sense that the new total with the interest added is then 1.5% on that. It's just a flat amount each month. So that is the 18% portion. It's settled to all taxing jurisdictions based on their proportional levy rate. The second part is a 9% penalty. That is split essentially 3 ways. As you can see, it's 9%. Based in statute, even for charter counties post-2008. And essentially, you see it's 2% to the county general fund, 2% to the collector tax maintenance fund, and 5% for the county employee retirement fund. That is, as we've noted here, on all delinquent and back taxes. So that does, as the interest is added every month, that new rate, you have the 9% when it's paid. So that's how those fees are applied. The last part is really dealing with real estate. It's dealing with those delinquent land lists. So that's just something, really kind of wanted to outline how those various penalties work, because that question was brought up, and also really clarify what we're talking about when we discuss interest. So happy to answer any questions, and certainly Collector can speak to that as well.
Are there any questions or comments? Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, sir. Just real quick, so we have no control over these fees?
That's my understanding. I mean, council can, elaborate a little more, but the statute even talks even for charter counties. But, again, I'm not council, so I defer to him on that.
So is that true, Karen? So we can't do anything with these fees, right?
They're statutory, certainly.
Yeah.
We've never looked at whether or not we can simply ignore those statutory fees, but our position would be that, that they're
Mr. Counselor,
statutory.
could you do a little more? There you go.
Yeah,
Thank
our
you.
position is that they are statutory and that these are the fees that we are required to apply.
Other questions or comments of the auditor?
I have just a quickie.
Please proceed.
On the state statute, if that...
Commissioner Johnson, Lawson, I mean? Yeah, there you go.
I think I got a big enough mouth, you don't need it. Okay, so the question here is, on that state statute that he has down below there, is there a way to change that? I mean, you have to go to the state and they have to bring the whole thing up before we can get it changed? Is it the legislatures that has to do it?
You go ahead, Mr. Arnold. I mean, I could answer too, but you're the one who is testifying.
Go ahead.
All right. Yes, it is a requirement that it go through the state government. The issue that we're working on, which is the ability for us to waive it in the case of a county error, was in fact passed by the legislature back in 2008. So any additional latitude would have to derive from legislation passed by the House and Senate and signed by the governor.
I will turn it over to the collector.
Thank you.
Where was that? Oh,
It goes to sleep. She might have to ask Mike to. Ask Mike to read it.
Barbara O'Reilly, collector. Next slide. Okay, this is what we prove, our proof that we send delinquent notices to all delinquent bills. If you'll notice, down at the bottom on that 19 bill, their amount was $33.66. That interest is 1.5% for 18 months, because this was the March 22nd tax year. So it was 18 months of interest, and then the total of that is what is calculated, the 9% on that. On the 20, it would have been for just the 26 months of penalty and interest. And on the 21, it would have been for 13 months, because we're talking March. This is a March delinquent. And if you'll notice on the 20 or the 19, there are fees added. This was apparently taken to protest, or it was on the tax sale. And we have to add additional fees, mailing fees, certified mail, processing fees, and that's what those fees are there at the bottom.
So Barbara, walk them through your process about when the notifications go out.
Okay, this went out in March, and it goes out in March of every year. We send it to the delinquents, and this is a proof that we have for our first notification of anybody that will be on the tax sale. And that alleviates some costs if we use this as our first notification of anybody being on the tax sale or delinquent property taxes. That's.
Are there any questions or
Is there any
comments?
questions or?
Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation, and I appreciate that today. So 2 questions. One, so that I can have this for the Jeopardy answer when I need to have it. How many, so that is the number of delinquent notices. How many total taxpayers, or what is the throughput that's coming to you total? So the total number of. How many tax bills you send? Yeah, how many tax bills? That's a great way to ask that question. That's a great way. Yeah, no, that's
I
fine.
don't know how many there are. How many do we have? How many, I'll ask the assessor approximately how many.
Apparently, this will help you on Trivial Pursuit too. Yeah.
Delinquents out too. These aren't all current.
Well, right, so that's going to get to my second question. Yeah, I'm just trying to get a feel of,
Tracy Baldwin, Clay County Assessor. To help kind of put that in perspective, we have about 92 to 3,000 real estate parcels. And of personal property accounts, there's about 130,000, give or take.
so the simple math is roughly 120,000 bills between personal property and real property, of which that's how many delinquents come up. Am I doing my math right?
I'll go ahead and speak into that.
Yeah.
Personal
Yeah.
property accounts,
Yeah.
but there's also 92,000
Right.
real estate accounts. So I would assume
About
that you would add
220.
them all together to
Yeah,
get the total.
yeah, that's where I'm
number of
going,
bills,
yeah,
so.
just to kind of get a feel of the percentage that may end up being delinquent. So then the other question is, and if I understood from our discussion last week, that is this the only notification that gets sent? So in March of '22, notifications go. My impression from last week's discussion, though, was that there are other notifications that go.
Right. If there would have been a payment of any kind or a question, maybe if they called in about it or anything, we will send them a notification. But no, after the end of the year, we wait until March because February is the end of the collector's year.
Right.
So in March, we start the delinquent process.
So any further communication is done, if I understand what you're saying, kind of on an individual basis. It's not in mass, it's kind of driven by what response you get
Right,
from
and-
that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Further questions or comments? Seeing none. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Administrator?
Thank you. So Resolution 2023-41 is excuse me, the request for waiver of fees and interest, penalties, and taxes due to the county error by Mr. Nyland, and I do believe Mr. Nyland is here to present information, and certainly staff is available to answer any questions. You have included in your packet his application for this request.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Yes. Yes, my name's David Nealand, 7304 Erica Court, Pleasant Valley. I wrote a personal check back in December 15th. My wife mailed it. She's a postal clerk. And I don't know what happened to it after that. I'm not blaming the Postal Service or Clay County, but apparently it didn't get here. I took time off last week to check on if they received it here or not. Apparently they didn't, so I went ahead and paid the full amount plus the interest and the fee. And I'm requesting the interest and the penalty to be dropped, because that's putting a hardship on me.
Okay. Are there questions of the applicant? Commissioner Johnson?
Yeah, so from my understanding of the law, we can't waive any of this unless it's the county's fault, which means it can't be the post office's fault. So either you have to claim that the county is at fault for losing your check, we can't legally do anything. Is that right, Counselor?
The focus on the statute is the county's error or omission as opposed to post office, dog ate it, whatever other, problem may have occurred, right?
But I never received any notice that was late or anything. I just took it on myself. 'Cause I know it hadn't cleared the bank, so I came down here, took time off from work, and again today. And I just,
So let me explain something. So last week, we heard a similar issue where somebody sent in their both personal property taxes, 2 checks. One check made it here, and the other check didn't. And we were informed that, I say we, us newbies on the commission, is that we wanted to give the money back, the interest and the penalties, but we're told, well, unless we can say that the county was at fault, we can't legally do that. And so if we're saying that the post office lost your check, although that's too bad and I wish we'd give your money back, council has told us the law says we can't do that. If you're saying that the county lost a check, you mailed it and the county lost it, well, that's a different story. Then we have to look at, I guess, the preponderance of evidence as to whose fault this was, the county's or your fault in the way you mailed it. Does that make sense?
not really, but, should be a way to, make it right, though.
I don't disagree with that at all. Believe me, we went through this for a little bit last week, similar incidents, and I 100% agree, and I wish we could. But from what I understand, we can't. Someone please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'd love to.
Like I said, I think county councilor pretty much gave us the state of the statutory law that we're operating under. Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you, and I appreciate the questions our colleague asked. And so this is the part of the job, and I'll just be very upfront with you. I'm going to give you bad news today, and I don't want to, but I'm going to. And it is not because I feel that you have done anything dishonest, in error, anything like that. But to kind of tack on to what my colleague has said, and I do appreciate staff making this presentation. So those list of statutes that were listed up there are the reason why I have to deliver bad news to you today. And I'm hopeful that they can change that, because what my colleague has said is exactly right. It is, the commission is told, here's the box that you must fit in. And the box that we must fit in has to say that it is the county that is in error here. And unless we can prove that the county is in error, then we have to say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I feel like I should be very upfront with you and direct, because you are a taxpayer, you have taken your time, and you have attempted to do what you were supposed to do and what you are asked to do. I hate saying that kind of stuff, but I feel like you're owed that. You're at least owed that, and that's not great news. But when I do what I do a little bit later, you'll understand why. And you're at least owed that, so appreciate you being here.
All right. Thanks for your time.
Commissioner Lawson.
Yeah, I want to apologize. Last week, we fought till we were bloody to try to get some people their money back. And finally, the county councilor stood up and said, in essence, you can't do it. It's illegal. So it was a learning experience. We're all, 4 of us are new. And while we would love to be able to meet your needs, like he says, our hands are bound and you can't go against those statutes. I even said to the county councilor last time, if I vote yes for this to give her money back, am I breaking the law? It's kind of that close. So I want to apologize sincerely. If I could do it, I'm telling you, I'd do it, because we sure tried our guts out last time. There was no way. So thanks for coming in, and
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right, thanks for your time.
Just one last comment. It is my understanding that the legislature is in fact taking up issues along these lines, so it is possible that this session or a future session may well allow county government to have more latitude, but until that happens, we are where we're at on this particular issue. All right, so we can either take care of this evening. Obviously, any motion would require marking one of the boxes on the resolution, or we could move this to a consent or a regular agenda item for next week, whatever the pleasure of the commission would be.
I tend to think, if I may,
Yes, please.
so that we don't prolong the agony, I would just as soon take action today on both this item, and then we have another coming up next, which I'm happy to just do them one at a time, if that's your
I think
pleasure.
that, yeah, I think dealing with them individually, because they each have individual aspects.
Sure. If that is the case, then I would like to move to check the box to deny the request for waiver of fees, interest, and penalties under 2023-41.
Motion has been made for the approval of 2023-41 with the box marked declined. Discussion. Seeing none, you're recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Wagner?
Aye.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson? Yes. Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson? Yes. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Thank you. That brings us to item 2023-42. Administrator?
Resolution 2023-42 is a request for waiver of fees, interest, penalties, and taxes due to county error from James J. Meek. Again, in your packet, you have a copy of Mr. Meek's request for this action, and I believe Mr. Meek is here today to share information with the commission.
Would the applicant like to come forward? There you are, sir.
Hello, my name is James J. Meek, 203 Owens Avenue, Smithville, Missouri. And we paid our taxes online. And when we got the receipt online, or the confirmation, I should say, we noticed that the last two digits of the checking account were missing. And we did this on the 30th of December at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We tried calling you guys then. Nobody was able to help us at that time. On January 3rd, which was the last day to pay our taxes, we called several times. I talked to Barbara in collections, and they said there's nothing they can do. I said, can we go ahead and pay them again? And I was told no. I was willing to pay a second time, and so I wouldn't have to pay penalties and interest, because I knew if I paid a second time and both of them went through, that I would get a refund for the one time that I paid too much. At this time, we was told no. My wife, Rebecca Pendleton Meek, works right up the street at Kearney. She said that, and she was on the phone at the same time I was, that she would come down and pay the taxes. And they said, no, they're showing us paid, there's nothing we can do. At that point, I feel that's a county error, because when the last two digits got dropped, how they got dropped, they got put into the computer on the website. How they got dropped, I have no clue. But since they got dropped, my banks did it as account not found. It returned it to you guys. But since we tried that day as well as January 3rd to try and pay our taxes a second time and were denied, that's a county error. If you guys won't allow us to pay a second time around to keep from paying penalties so we can get the money back at a later time, that's a county problem. There's got to be a way that we can change this. That's something the county needs to look into. That's not a state issue, that's a county issue. But the fact that we was willing to come in and pay them on January 3rd, the last day we could pay them, I have an issue with the county charging me taxes and fees. And I feel that's a county issue, yes.
I would like to, before we turn it open to the rest of the commission, I'd like to inquire from staff. My understanding is sometimes when I do things online, if I type something, say it's my social security number, if I do not type in the proper number of digits, then it will not allow me to submit on Mr. Meek, you said that the error was in typing your account number, your checking account number to have the money taken out of. Is that where the,
We
is
typed it
that?
incorrectly.
Yeah.
And after we hit enter, it deducted two digits from it, the
Yeah,
last two digits.
the 2 digits were dropped. The question I have is, of staff is, on that software, if that's the correct term, would it not, because bank account numbers are generally consistent, are they not? Or am I mistaken on that?
Well, I'm going to defer to our collector to come up and answer some specific questions here, but as a general rule, and as the gentleman indicated, once he processed it, he did get a confirmation from the system. So my understanding, when to your question, Commissioner, is no, I don't believe it immediately goes out to his bank and double checks to see if all the numbers are there. I think that's a processing time because different banks have different account numbers. This isn't the routing number. I don't believe this is the account number. And so I don't know that they're all standardized across all the financial institutions. But I defer to our collector who knows our system better than I do.
Yeah, I'd understood that in fact, account numbers were pretty, bless you, were fairly universal. And you're right, they contained routing numbers and other information. If staff has any insight into that. And what I'm getting at is, if our software does not, I'm wondering how software handles, if you were to put in, obviously a bank account number is going to be a relatively long string of numbers. My question is, say you put in 4 numbers and you hit submit. If I were to do that, say for my social security number on an application, which is of course standardized number of digits, it would not allow me to submit. It would say error, and then it would highlight that. I'm wondering, how does this work with the software that the county employs?
Whenever they enter the account, if you fill in all the digits, it doesn't know, our software doesn't know at that point if it's a valid number.
It's not so much a valid number as a valid number of digits. And like I say, I don't know this for sure. I thought the bank account numbers were relatively, were pretty much standardized. I might be mistaken on that. I've not, my wife worked for a bank, but precious little rubbed off on me, I'm afraid.
According to my credit union, it is a standard digit of numbers.
Standard number of digits.
Yes, yeah, standard number of digits, yes.
Our report that we received back of an incorrect account or invalid account was the fact that there was some digits like 2500, I think, was entered on our records, but there needed to be like an 01 or something at the end.
And that
And
was entered, but when it was submitted.
Well, hold on,
something like
let's kind of make sure we address the comments to the commission. I guess what I'm asking is, like I say, if I entered 7 numbers on my social security, it would indicate error and it would not allow me to, and I'm trying to get to where whether it was in fact an incorrect number, which if it had the wrong number of digits, it would certainly be an incorrect number. But if it was an incorrect number because there were not enough digits filled into the slots, then that to me, I see a distinction between those two. Does that make sense?
Yes, there were apparently enough numbers, it's just the ending numbers were incorrect.
Okay,
Is
and the
what-
gentleman
what our
indicates
system
not.
pulled
Do we have any printouts on that? I mean, I'm sorry, my computer is not working at the moment, so I'm not pulling up my samples. I'm sorry.
I've got the printout here with the confirmation. I also got the printout from my bank with my account number and the routing number on it. And that should have been in with you guys because she photocopied it 2 weeks ago and gave it to you guys.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone else has mastered the technology. Commissioner Wagner.
And I think I'm picking up on what my colleagues are saying. I see what is in here is the confirmation That is dated January 12th.
I got the one that was dated.
Oh, I'm sorry, no,
December
the
30th.
payment date 12/30/2022. So this is from Platts City, sent from Platte City Electric Cooperative, is what I'm
Platte
seeing.
Clay
That's
Electric
actually, that's
Cooperative.
his spouse.
Right, but I guess
Right.
it's the,
yeah.
what I see on the page is the payment confirmation.
That occurred on 12/30, which
That's-
has all the
yeah.
relevant information, and the checking number, which of course, again, even on any receipts, they usually only print out for you the last 4 digits for
Right.
confidentiality. But you can see all the X's were other numbers that were submitted.
Right, so the issue here is the last 2, which read here as 0010.
And it should be 250010.
Okay.
And when it was put in as 10, when it was submitted, the 10 somehow disappeared. And my wife deals with this stuff all the time. She's a marketing director for a large electrical cooperative. Believe me, she deals with this all the time. So,
I'll stop my questions for now.
and then the fact that we tried to pay it on Tuesday, the last day we could do it, and they told us we couldn't pay it, to me, that's another issue, because then we still wouldn't have had late fees and penalties, and we could have been refunded the original payment if both would have went through. So I have an issue with that. That's why I'm here. I mean, it's not just the fact that the first one didn't go through, it's the fact that I got told on Tuesday, the last day we could pay the payment, that I couldn't pay it. That's a county problem.
Commissioner Johnson. I'm sorry, you were done.
First of all, Mr. Meek, thank you for doing the best you can to try and pay your taxes on time. I appreciate that. And I'm sorry for any inconvenience that you've gone through. I'm sorry that you had to come down here and plead your case. With that, I move that we approve this and we refund any fees, penalties, or interest that Mr. Meek has been charged.
Okay, since a motion has been made, I will need to repeat the motion, and then we can continue our discussion. So, motion has been made, on 2023-42, that it be passed with the box marked approved.
Check the box approved,
Okay,
yes.
yeah, I need to restate the motion before we now continue. With that, did you have anything to add to that? Commissioner Withington?
So I know I've had a lot of people complain about this website of ours. Do we have any records to show that he did enter 10 and that the 10 were dropped?
We don't have any, no.
Okay.
Because
So,
the
so,
Privacy Act, we cannot see anything but those last 4 numbers, and that's all that our computer picked up.
okay. So I'm going to trust that he did enter those last 2 digits, and I'm going to support Commissioner Johnson's motion. And then do we know why he was told he could not pay?
I don't know, I would have to, excuse me. I don't know, sir. I would have to look at the records and see who spoke with him and what was said. I don't know. I don't
Okay.
have any other information, so.
Okay, well, it seems like he did a good job trying to pay his taxes, so thank you for that. And yeah, I'm going to support Commissioner Johnson's motion.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yeah, the
Oh,
only
I'm sorry,
thing,
did you want to respond to anything? Okay, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't skipping over anybody. Commissioner Lawson?
the only thing I have to say is, number one, if the man had not gotten the payment confirmation, I would have done the same thing. I'd have said, yippee, it's paid, and gone on my way. But then to find out that there was a problem, and for us not to say, get on down here and pay us, to give you that opportunity, then I definitely agree with Commissioner Johnson that, yeah, this definitely is our fault in a way, yeah.
Is there any way that we can prevent this going forward, that we can maybe talk to our vendor to do an enhancement upgrade with our next software code upgrade or anything?
We have looked into it, and because of the Privacy Act, we are restricted from what we can see a lot of times. And we don't have phone
Well,
numbers
but
of
if
anybody.
all the numbers are, if bank account numbers are standardized, you would think that it would say.
But
if
they're not. That's their routing number, or that's their account number. And see, it wouldn't be, if I could put in 894-605-322, and it'll go through. It's just whenever it gets to the processing, it's not a valid number.
Okay.
Yeah.
Further discussion?
I close.
I have to recognize you first.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Would the applicant like any closing remarks before we put it on for a vote?
Just that I don't understand why, yes, we paid it on the 30th, and there was an error on our confirmation, and we came on January 3rd. We called and tried to say we could pay it, and got told that since it's already shown as paid, they can't take another payment. And I think that's the reason why, but at the same time, we're trying to make sure we don't have late fees and penalties. And, you know, we're telling them that on our confirmation that it's showing 2500 and it should be showing 0010 as the last 4 digits. And they're saying that since it shows as paid, we can't pay it again. I find that as a problem.
Okay. Okay.
Other than that, that's all I got.
Commissioner Johnson, unless there's further comment, you're recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner?
Aye.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Very well. 2023-43 passes with the box marked approved checked. Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to two companion items, 2023-38 and 2023-39. Administrator?
I apologize. Resolution 2023-38 has a companion resolution with 2023-39. Resolution 2023-38 is rescinding Resolution 2022-416 and the matter of subdivision approval for the Northbrook Farms subdivision. And the companion resolution would be considered if the prior resolution is approved and 2023-39 is approve and accept letter of credit on the Northbrook Farms subdivision. And Planning Director Jones is here to provide information.
Please proceed.
Kip Jones, Planning Director. So this is a request for the Northbrook Farms from their developer. And there we go. So I'm going to talk to you about 3 things, hopefully rather briefly. The first one is the major subdivision process. Second one's going to be the review of the subdivision as it was approved in December. And the third one is going to be the request from the developer. So this was considered a major subdivision because it included infrastructure that the developers required to install, including streets, stormwater, water line extensions. So it goes through this typical process, and this is just the process after the final plat was approved. So in this case, the final plat was approved on 12/14 of last year. In our typical situation, after that plat is approved, that's when the developer would come in, install that infrastructure, get the street in, the water line in, and then all those outside agencies would come and inspect that infrastructure, make sure it was good. That would include the water district, highway, fire district, planning and zoning, give those approvals. At that point, the developer would then be required to submit a letter of credit, a maintenance guarantee in this case. They're required to maintain that infrastructure for a 2-year period. So they get the county to accept this maintenance guarantee. That's a letter of credit the county can pull on if there are corrections like potholes in the street that the developer needs to repair and refuses to within that 2-year period. So once that's accepted by the county, that's when the plat is allowed to be recorded. They can record the plat. It makes those lots real at that point, and that's when they can sell lots. So that's our typical process that we go through with every major subdivision. Now, this next slide is just kind of the background of the case. It's been since December when this went in front of County Commission. The property's outlined in yellow. It's approximately 144 acres. It's located off of A Highway. And you can see there's a subdivision to the south. And what they are doing is adding to the cul-de-sac to the south, if this will work, there it is. So they are extending that cul-de-sac up to this property, which would allow them to create lots. So there you can see the lots. They range anywhere from 10 to over 100 acres. This has already been approved by the County Commission, but What the developer is requesting today is to allow them to record the plat before that infrastructure goes in. Again, it's different than that process I just told you, and what that would allow them to do is to sell that lot with the X on it that does not abut the infrastructure. So the 4 lots in the red, green, blue, and purple have access from that cul-de-sac. There's a 10-acre lot that has access off of a highway, not off the infrastructure that's going to be installed. So that's what this would allow. Now, if the county commission allows them to record the plat before that infrastructure is in, it also creates those other lots that would not have road access at this point. That is allowed by the Land Development Code if they put up a performance letter of credit, which is the total cost of that infrastructure that would need to be installed. Now, I will add, we met with this developer multiple times before the application. If this had ever been a topic of discussion, we would have advised, hey, we're going to create 2 plats. We're going to create a 10-acre lot separate that's not tied to that infrastructure. Then we're going to create the other plat that is tied to that infrastructure. So the developer has submitted a letter of credit for $250,000. That's greater than that infrastructure cost, which is closer to $220,000. That was reviewed by the county engineer and approved. As the county administrator stated, the old resolution would need to be rescinded. We adjusted a couple conditions because typically there's a condition that says all that infrastructure has to be inspected before the plat's recorded. So we adjusted that. So that's a majority of it. Staff would have concerns, if the developer chose not to put the infrastructure in for some reason, then does the county become the developer? It takes staff time. We probably have to hire an engineer to manage that project. Not that that would happen in this case, but we have to plan for that. So if half of the infrastructure gets put in and it stops, then the county would have to draw on that letter of credit and finish that project out. So staff has concerns about that. And then also, even though they're submitting a letter of credit for $250,000, we know with the way prices are, costs go up, change dramatically daily. If there were issues putting some of that infrastructure in, is that $250,000 enough for the county to go in there and finish that project? So that would be concerns that staff has. I'm happy to answer any questions the commissioners have, and I believe the developer would like to make some comments as well.
Does anyone have questions? Yes, Commissioner Withington.
Is the cul-de-sac the only infrastructure we're talking about right now?
It's extending the cul-de-sac. They're also required to overlay the street to the south, extend the water line, and there's stormwater infrastructure, some drainage tubes, things like that that have to be installed.
Okay. Other questions? Commissioner Wagner?
Thank you, and Kip, thanks for the presentation. I will ask, as you had mentioned before, had you known all of this back in the day, you would have just simply platted this two different ways. And I guess my question is, what precludes us from going down that road?
It would be a time element because she would have to start over basically with 2 new plats and go back through the process again. So we'd be talking about 3 to 4 months to get the 10-acre lot approved, and then 8 to 9 months because we'd go through the process with the infrastructure again.
I gotcha. So in the end, really, the risk is simply one of, is the letter that we have and that's been submitted to us enough of an incentive to actually get the work done within a year, thus not having to have us in the business of becoming developer? I mean, is that kind of the thing?
Yes, because I know my staff, and I don't want to speak for the highway department, but I don't think they have any interest in managing this job as well.
I have no interest in managing that job as well.
I was going to appoint you. But...
All right, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments or questions? Commissioner Lawson.
Is it possible for us to require maybe a little larger bond from them, and then they can go, then you would feel more comfortable allowing them to proceed?
So they've submitted one larger than what the code requires by about $30,000, and I would kind of rely on council if we could require more.
The short answer is no. Our code specifically has a percentage of the project requirement, and they have met that.
I do have a question also, Mr. Jones, of you as far as staff goes. You'd mentioned that there were some concerns that staff had on doing all this. If we were to, just say for the sake of argument, put it on regular and then take action on this next week, would that time period do anything to alleviate the concerns that staff might have, or is it really not related to that, but something that would happen after passage? So I guess what I'm saying is, putting it on regular and then passing at that point would not resolve the concerns that staff would have.
No, sir, and I think the applicant's probably going to request that the commission vote on this tonight.
Okay. Anything further? Commissioner
Just for
Johnson.
clarification, sir, where the X is up there, that, one of the things they have to have is this approved for them to sell that property that has a house on it now. Is that correct?
Well, so that's a difficult question. I can never stop somebody from creating a legal description for a property and selling it, but that's not the proper way to do it. But to do it properly, yes, to be able to sell that 10 acres, they need to be able to record the plat, which the current resolution says they can't do unless the infrastructure is installed.
So we'd be holding up that sell, and basically, if we
Yes,
don't
sir.
approve this. Just for the record, I'm in favor of this and approving this tonight myself.
Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you, and I may be too, but I do have one other question that you kind of ran over, Kip. So the letter speaks to the road and the extension of the cul-de-sac, but one of the other things that you mentioned was concerning extension of water lines and other utilities into that area. Maybe this is something that the applicant can speak to, but I guess my question is, the letter of credit that we received seems silent on those other utility issues. And so I guess my question is are those other utilities of issue to us? And if so, how so?
To me, they are, because we want to make sure we're creating buildable lots. So the estimates submitted by the developer included estimates for the water main extension and all the other infrastructure. So to me, that letter of credit is enough to cover all of those costs.
Okay, if there's nothing further, if the applicant would care to make any comments and accept questions, please come forward.
Thank you, Commission. For the record, my name is John Rowe. I'm an attorney with the Rowe Law Firm. Address is 4444 North Bellevue. That's Kansas City, Missouri. And I represent Conrad and Shannon Stumpenhouse. They are the owners of the property that we're talking about, the developers. And Shannon Stumpenhouse is here with me tonight. And just by way of background, this is a project that has had a number of approvals already. There was a rezoning that was approved by the County Commission. That was Resolution 2022-240. A preliminary plat was approved. That was Resolution 2022-241. And as mentioned here this afternoon, in mid-December, the final plat for this project was approved. And so I want to be clear, what we're here with tonight, there's no change to the plat. It's still 5 lots. Lot 1 has always been, that's where the farmhouse is located, that has always been oriented to A Highway and always has had its access from A Highway. Lots 2 through 5, with Lot 5 being retained by the Stumpenhouses, that's where they're going to build, needs access from this extended cul-de-sac. So that's one of the required public improvements. And then there's a pipe that goes underneath that street that has to be done. And kind of make a long story short, all of those required public improvements can be estimated as to what the cost can be. And we've done that. All three bids, all from local reputable companies, no fly-by-night, somebody from New York, and they're going to disappear in the night. These are companies you've all known. And the letter of credit is from Pony Express Bank, about the most reputable bank you can get in Liberty, Missouri right here. So these are all people putting their names on a project where the Stumpenhouses are going to need that cul-de-sac for themselves to build on the property they're going to retain, Lot 5. So I guess I just want to make clear that we're not here asking for a pass or a deviation or a waiver. Your land development code sets up 2 procedures by which you can end up with a recorded plat. One way to do it is you get your plat approved, you put your infrastructure in, and if the county says looks good, then you can go record your plat. The other process, which is laid out in your code too, this is not something that's, not there, it's there. You can get your final plat approved. You can post a letter of credit for 100% of the cost of the required infrastructure. Record your plat now, which puts you in a position to sell this lot 1, and we have a buyer, and we have a family, a husband and wife, 3 children, and another one on the way, as I understand. We have an opportunity to welcome somebody into Clay County here by doing what we're asking here tonight. So we have a letter of credit there. So the question becomes, well, why are you coming back to us with let's rescind your previous approval and have another approval of your final plat? Well, to do it this way, there's 2 minor changes that benefit the county in the 15 conditions that were attached to the approval of this plat. So let's go back and make sure, take a couple baby steps, make sure we understand what we're talking about. When this was approved in December, there were 15 conditions attached to the resolution that approved the plat. What's before you tonight is a resolution that has 15 conditions attached to it. All of those conditions are the same except 2 which benefit and protect the county. Condition number 9, which used to say we had to get approval from these various agencies before we record the plat, now says infrastructure approvals from these various agencies have to be obtained before issuance of any building permits for lots 2 to 5. So you are in control. This isn't a situation where, okay, if we let them do this, now that plat's recorded, now all 5 lots are going to get sold. No. Lot 1 would be able to be sold. It already has an existing house on it and doesn't need this required infrastructure in order for that lot to be used. But we can't sell or build any houses on 2 through 5 until the infrastructure's in. That's what the condition now says. And to double that up, the only other change was on condition 15, which were things that, some minor things that needed to be fixed on the plat, name, put a 30-foot utility line, a 50-foot building line, those kinds of little technical things to clean up. There's now been a condition added that there be a note on the plat that says, a note indicating building permits for lots 2 through 5 shall not be issued until infrastructure is completed and approved by the county, Clay County, and letter of credit for maintenance guarantee is accepted by Clay County. And again, just by way of explanation, there's two different, so we don't get mixed up, 2 different subdivision guarantees in your land development code, and pretty typical with other counties and municipalities around town here. You have a performance guarantee. I'm putting up money, I don't perform, you get to go get the money and you can perform. Okay, once the infrastructure's in, you guys want to make sure that for at least a 2-year period, that infrastructure is going to perform the way it's supposed to. So that's a maintenance bond that gets put up. So what we're proposing is the former of the subdivision guarantees allowed by your land development code, a performance guarantee. So Pony Express Bank doesn't do this, $250,000, unless they know the person that they're putting it out there for has the $250,000 to back it up. Another thing, I mentioned, the sale and a family to be welcomed into Clay County. Here's another real nuts and bolts reason why this should be approved. We're in the middle of winter. Asphalt plants are closed right now. If we wanted to put in an asphalt road right now, where do we get the asphalt? We have a buyer for a lot that doesn't need this infrastructure, and we're supposed to wait until the asphalt plant's open? That doesn't seem real practical. And so therefore, that's why your code, like a lot of other codes, it's not much different than other codes, provides for this mechanism, for just this eventuality. Somebody might need to move forward and keep the forward progress going for a new development while asphalt plants are closed, and that's what this is. So the windup is, The county is secured. You have a $250,000 letter of credit, and you know, to us lawyers, words matter. I should note, it's an irrevocable letter of credit. Your code requires an irrevocable letter of credit. The document that's been submitted to you is titled Irrevocable Letter of Credit on Pony Express Bank letterhead. And Commissioner Wagner, you asked a question about, well, are these other things besides the road in there? There's language in here. This document is on the format provided to us by your planning department, by your planning director. And so we took the form, gave it to Pony Express Bank, they put it on their letterhead, and now have submitted it to you, signed by the president of the bank. And there's a paragraph in there that talks about it's all public improvements and dedications for Northbrook Farms, a subdivision in Clay County, Missouri, will be constructed, approved, and maintained in accordance with Clay County road and subdivision specs, etc. So this isn't just a letter of credit for the road, and where are we going to get the money for the pipe? And this is for the whole shebang. We got bids for the whole, everything that we're required to do. The letter of credit is for an amount in excess of what the bids are for what we're required to do. So you're secured. It's a procedure allowed by your code. And the conditions that are tweaked in the resolution that's before you tonight gives you additional security in that we can't get any building permits for lots 2 through 5 once this thing's recorded unless these improvements are in. So with that, on behalf of the Stumpenhausens, we respectfully request your approval of this tonight. And as I've kind of learned listening to you, Commissioner Nolte, we're specifically requesting that you approve 2023-38, the one dealing with the final plat, by checking the box marked approved, because it reads approved in accordance with the prescribed land development code with 15 conditions as followed, and we talked about that. And then we have this companion case that has the Pony Express Bank, and I'm respectfully asking that the commission adopt that resolution as well. And if there's a box that needs to be checked on that approval, we're frankly asking for your unanimous approval here tonight so that we don't have to come back next week and we can proceed to get this plat approved and get this new family into Clay County. Let's welcome them here. Thank you.
Questions or comments of the applicant? Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to comment on this? Seeing none. Now, for clarification, just as a reminder to commissioners, we do not have to dispose of every item on regular agenda. We can put it till next meeting, or we can approve it this evening. It's at the discretion of the commission, so I just want to remind commissioners that there is that option if they so choose to exercise it. Any other discussion? Commissioner Wagner.
Just I guess a quick one, because for me to accelerate it would assume that there is a date certain, usually a closing, that would be involved with such a matter, in which case I would normally accelerate that. If there's not a closing, my feeling would be to set it on consent for next week, and that way you at least know that it's going to pass. But my question to council is simply, is simply, other than the fact you just want to be done with us, and I always understand that, I tend to push for faster things when I know that there are documents that need to be signed and closings that are apparent. So if you can speak to that, that would help me make a motion at least.
And before you answer, just for point of clarification, by putting an item onto the consent calendar for next time, they would be passed as a group unless the commissioner decided to take them out individually. So they would appear on next meeting's consent agenda. Those items would be voted on en masse. So the chances of passage are obviously much greater in that, because then we consider it to be a matter of relative light controversy, if any controversy at all. So with that understanding, just in case I want to make sure you're aware of our procedures and how we work.
I do understand it's at your discretion.
Great.
The direct answer to your question is the property is under contract. The closing date has come and gone, but we've had to extend it. And frankly, we worry if we're going to lose a buyer or if we're going to, maybe end up on the receiving end of a nasty lawyer letter.
I understand that, and that's exactly what I needed to know. Thank you very much.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner Withington, I think you had something?
I was going to ask if there was a closing date also, but I was going to make a motion that we just approve this tonight. I don't see any reason making them come back next week.
To clarify your motion, you would be making the motion?
I
for
would be
pa-
making the motion
Yes.
to approve 2023-38, 2023-39 tonight.
With the box
Box
marked approved.
approved. Yes.
Correct. Very well, motion's been made for the passage of 2023-39 and 2023-38, with the box marked approved. Further discussion? Commissioner Johnson, did you have something? I thought I saw you motion.
I was going to do what he just did. I was going to move to approve this. I will say I'm familiar with this property because it's not too far from my house. I drive by it all the time, and I've been watching this go through this process here for the last couple months. Even before I sat here, I sat over there and listened to this be presented, some of the stuff be presented. But I'm in full support of this, and I think it's a good thing.
Further discussion, Commissioner Carpenter?
Thank you. Commissioner, can I ask a question of Mr. Jones?
Absolutely.
So, we discussed this recently in terms of expediting these P&Z cases. Obviously, our standard rule is to hear during work sessions, vote a week later so that we can have time to consider items, even non-controversial items, consent items, we, take the week. We decided as a group to essentially create an exception for non-controversial P&Z cases, that we would start taking those up and voting them on the same day. You came before us, did a presentation describing the situations in which that would be appropriate, and we agreed to those conditions as a commission. I'm wondering, is it your opinion that this is a case that met those conditions that you presented to us whenever that meeting was recently?
So are you asking, like, when this was presented in December?
No,
whether-
I'm sorry, I'll clarify. So you and I can't recall, which recent meeting it was, but we had a meeting in which we discussed how we could expedite non-controversial P&Z cases. You presented to us a list of criteria of which cases would qualify, and I'm asking, since we're discussing now expediting this one and doing it on the same day as we've heard it, would this one have met the criteria that you laid out?
No, this would not. I would not have made recommendation that this met those criteria. That's why I checked not immediate action on the RCA or on the RCA. This is a very unique request.
Okay.
I think we've only done this one other time that I'm aware of. So with it being this unique, I would not have made that recommendation.
Thank you.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I mean, if you've got a question, this would be, sure.
Mr. Jones, the question I have is the concerns on the part of staff. Are they pretty much just the possibility that we would, as you say, become the developers? Is that the sum total of the concerns expressed by staff? Are there any others that you'd like to bring to our attention?
Yeah, it would be the management of the project if that ever occurred. I'm sure it wouldn't in this case, but I think part of my job is to throw those ideas out and try to protect the county in unique circumstances, and then the possibility of any cost overrun. If the commission chooses to approve this, then we'll do our best to manage it, and I'm sure it'll go fine. But if something does happen, then we'll do our best to make it be a good project still.
Since the motion on the before us is for the approval this evening, I wanted to make sure that we had not overlooked any concerns that staff may have on this matter.
Thank you.
Commissioner, if I could continue. Thank you. And I'm done with you. Thank you, Mr. Director Jones. Thank you. I think we ought to follow the rules that we have. And I totally understand the idea of expediting, and we had a good discussion, I think, around non-controversial P&Z cases. I supported your idea to allow those to go through more quickly. I guess what I would wonder is, why did we go through a discussion around when we would do that? If we were then going to sort of immediately deviate from those standards and do something different. I think when it comes to these matters of sort of protocol in terms of the way we operate, that, you know, we have an ordinance on the books that says that we hear things one week, we vote on it the next week. We have sort of emergency-based exceptions for if there is some, you know, external reason why it needs to be expedited, that we can unanimously choose to do so. And then, like I said, through discussion as a commission, we decided that on non-controversial P&Z cases that met a certain set of criteria, which Director Jones has just said this one does not, that we would allow for those ones to hear them and vote them the same day. So, you know, I'm open to feedback on that concern, but that is my concern, is that we would be deviating from the policy that we just recently set for ourselves.
By the way, Commissioner Carpenter, I apologize if I interrupted. It was not my intention. Commissioner Wagner, I believe you had something to say?
Thank you. And our colleagues' points are very well taken in that we hate to create new precedent every week. After a while, it means you have no rules, you just create rules as you go. I do understand the issue at hand, as it appears that December we did not have a buyer, and I use the collective we, I'm part of the team apparently, but we did not have a buyer in December. We have a buyer now. But the one thing that I took from the last question I asked was, part of the issue is we've already passed one closing. We don't want to pass another. I understand that. If I recollect what I heard, though, previously, that there is not a new closing date that has been established, and there is a conversation to be had with the prospective owner to be sure that they're still on. Did I hear that correctly, Counselor? That we I'm gonna have that would be fine, because to me. Yeah, so help me with that.
I am Shannon Stumpenhouse, and I'm one of the owners of this project. And we have been under contract actually since November.
Okay.
So our closing date was January 19th. Had I known also at the very beginning of this process that I wouldn't be able to record once I got approval in December, I thought that getting approval in December meant, because I'm not meant to be a developer, I am in this case, but I'm really just wanting to be a homeowner.
Right.
If I thought after December I could walk away and sell this lot, so we had a contract contingent upon this meeting that was supposed to be in November, got moved to December, supposed to be this process is taking a lot longer than I had envisioned.
Right,
so
right.
that's why I then went and hired an attorney to help me get
Sure.
this done, because I have a family that's relying on me and what I told them I could do to
Right.
get them in this house. So our closing date was January 19th, and I am now paying them $113 a day to extend their interest rate until we can close. So the sooner the better. And the only thing I'm going to do with this resolution is let these people move into this house and sell it.
No,
And then- yeah.
I get it, and I follow you, and I'm trying to reconcile what I believe is the desire of this commission to help you out, but also recognize that, yes, Commissioner Carpenter is right. This is what we agreed to do last week this way, and now we're kind of getting around that. And to me, the only thing that impacts that, in my opinion, to get you where you need to be is simply, is there a new date as far as closing is concerned? If there is, and it's within this next week, then that suggests to me that what my two colleagues have advocated for makes a lot of sense, because that makes you whole when you can actually close on this. On the other hand, if that hasn't been set, and it won't be set until after a week from today, then I go back to, well, Commissioner Carpenter is correct, and even if we put it on a consent for next week, that still keeps with our processes that we've just established, while still getting you to the position you need to get to close when you want to close. And so I'm trying to play a little balancing here.
No, I get it. And so the answer to your question is January 19th was the closing date. We have a temporary extension. If we don't get this approved today, I'll have to go to them and ask them for another extension.
Well, I'm not sure you have to, because in my mind, I guess that's the secondary question.
Yeah.
Can you close at any time, or do you
No.
actually have to set that date?
No, we have to set the date.
So what I would tend to advise you, because back in a former life that I won't talk about, we would do this all the time. Some of them know what I'm referring to. Simply knowing that, yeah, for the sake of argument, you're going to close in 2 weeks. This thing comes up next week. It comes on consent. No one's going to have a problem with it. Boom, it gets done, and we have still been, we still have fidelity with the program we just set last week. That's where my head is going.
Right.
I tend to think we're going to help you out. The only question is, are we going to use the rules we just established last week, or are we going to use and create new rules? Either way, I think we're going to help you out. But that date becomes important to me, because then that tells me, do I have to take action today, or can I take action next week and still get you where you want to be? And that's a whole lot of explanation there,
Right.
but thank you, that helps me a bunch. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, I believe you wanted to speak?
Yeah, so first of all, I don't think this violates any kind of procedure that we talked about. This is not, and let's make it clear, this is not the first time this has come before the commission.
Sure. Yeah.
Everyone understand that? This is not the first time the commission has heard about this. And the only thing that is really of importance tonight is, do we think she's good for the $250,000 that she has to put up? That's really what we're looking at. That's not going to change between now and next week. She's already been going through, I don't know how many months with this process. It's like, and this is what frustrates me, and I say almost every week I'm up here, about government and why government can never last in the private sector, is, to me, instead of thinking of a reason why we can't push it off, my thought is, why should we push it off? Is there a reason why we should push this off to next week? What's going to change between now and next week? Either she's good for it to 250 or she's not. And according to the Pony Express Bank, she's good for it. That's all that really matters. And to me, this is not the same as what the issues that we were talking about before, about first seeing this whole thing for the first time tonight. That's not it. This is done. All that matters is, hey, does she have the $250,000? Is she good for it to get this infrastructure stuff done so she can get this stuff moving? And it's a no-brainer to me. It's like, let's start thinking more like the private sector and make decisions and get things moving instead of just bottlenecking up. We put on a consent calendar next week. Nobody's going to look at this again. We're going to come up here next week and we're going to talk about it and we'll approve it on consent. What good does that do?
Good. So,
Please,
thank you,
proceed.
Commissioner. Look, if everybody wants to approve this tonight, frankly, I'm gonna vote yes with the rest of you, because I'm not gonna hold this up just by myself. What I would say though is, what's, in terms of like the government being inefficient, et cetera. Well, you're part of the Clay County government now. We have an ordinance that says what it says, and if we're going to continue to deviate from what the ordinance says in terms of hearing things one week and voting them out the next week, on the grounds that it's more efficient to do so, then I, respectfully suggest that you offer an ordinance to change our current procedures, and that way we're not having to deviate from what is our prescribed by ordinance procedures for hearing things one week and voting them the next week, and then it won't be an issue anymore, right? Then we can hear them one day and vote them out the same day if the commission wants to move to a policy in which that's how we operate. It just isn't what our current rules call for. Our current rules call for discussing things during the work session, voting for them the next week. That can be changed. In fact, that policy has only been in place for the last 2 years. When Commissioner Thompson and I came in, Commissioner Nolte proposed moving to a system in which we hear things one day, vote them out the next week. He did so on the ground that that's good government, that under the previous commission, they were often, bringing things up and moving big items the same day without giving commissioners time to, think it over, think up amendments, that sort of thing. And I supported that change. From my time in government, I never liked when things were brought up one day in a committee hearing, and then we were asked to vote it the same day. I think taking a week is the better policy. That being said, we can change the ordinance that says we do it a week apart. That can be changed, but we haven't changed it yet, is my only point. And so as long as that is what the rules of the road are, I don't think that we should continue week after week after week deviating from the rules. That's why we had a discussion around non-controversial P&Z cases. We tasked our director with coming up with the conditions under which we would do that. He did so. He presented them to us. We agreed to them. I've just asked him, does this case meet those standards? He says it does not. So we would be deviating again. And my only point isn't that you're wrong and that we can't be more efficient, et cetera. My only suggestion is that we follow the rules that we have created for ourselves. And if we feel that we need to change those rules to make it more efficient, then I think one or more commissioners ought to propose a new ordinance to modify the way we currently do business. That's all I'm suggesting. I don't think you're wrong on this particular case. For me, it's not really a case-by-case basis. It's more just, what are the rules that we're operating under, and are we going to be consistent in following them?
I'd just like to add to what Commissioner Carpenter said, and that is that we seem to be going down the road, and this does not necessarily say we should or should not act on this evening, but I think as a general policy in the past, as a general operation, we've taken things on regular agenda on a work session, and we have either put them on consent or regular for the next business session. The exceptions that have been made usually are made for a good reason. In the case of the first two items we talked about this evening, that was so that citizens would not be forced to come before us twice. That is, while a convenience for the citizens, that's something that I think is something of a judgment call. But when it comes to most of these items, I think unless there is good reason, I have a lot of concern about operating where we just do them in one meeting, particularly since we have rules changes pending on P&Z items. I think until we've had a chance to review those policies, I think that, some degree of actually, reviewing the issues and understanding them better. I realize there are aspects of this that are a little bit unique in that this project has already been approved. However, I can't help it but have a lot of sympathy for what Commissioner Carpenter says, in that we can go faster, but the question is, should we go faster? Is it in the best interest of the people of this county? And at the end of the day, that has to be the consideration, not for our convenience, so that we're able to adjudicate these things more quickly, but acting in the best interest of the county and making sure that we have properly reviewed and vetted the issues to the degree we are able to get done. With that, Commissioner Lawson?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Here's the bottom line. This woman's been at this for months, literally months. And she's got the person, did I hear you correctly? Did you say you're paying $110 a month or day to them? Yeah. Okay. If we were to approve this right now, tonight, could that 110 stop? Okay. To me, that's reason enough. I think she's put up the money. It's been going on for months. They're ready to buy, and we all know there's always that off chance when something isn't in blood that somebody could just say, hey, lady, I'm tired of fighting with this thing, and they could walk. So I've been in real estate for a short period of time, couldn't handle it because it wasn't enough money. But the thing is, I know how she feels. $110 a day, add it up, that's a lot of darn money. Let's help her out, and let's go ahead and get the darn thing approved and let her close the deal and stop paying the $110.
If there is no other comment from the rest of the commission, I'm going to recognize Commissioner Withington to make any comments or questions. And then at the end of that, if I don't see any other indications, then you will be recognized to close at the end of your comments you make at this point. Go ahead.
Director Jones.
Oh, go ahead and turn on your mic.
It is on. Oh, okay. Yeah. So you guys sent out your standard letters to all the neighbors when this came before the commission in December?
It was before that. With the rezoning and preliminary, the certified letters were sent out.
Did you send out letters again this time?
Not with this case, but with the final plat in December, yes.
Okay. Did anybody complain?
We had opposition at the first case with the rezoning preliminary, not at the final, but that's pretty typical. If the rezoning preliminary gets approved, there's not usually a whole lot of opposition at the final plat.
Okay, so we haven't heard any complaints since then?
Not since the rezoning and preliminary.
Okay. All right, that was the only question I had. And,
Since there seem to be no other comments, you're recognized. It is your motion,
yeah,
correct?
yeah,
You're
so
recognized to
I'm gonna,
close.
I'm gonna stick with my motion, and I close.
Very well. With that, please call the roll.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner?
No.
Commissioner Carpenter?
No.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Very well. That brings us to item 2020.
We need
excuse
to
me.
take some action here. That did not pass. That was on first reading.
So we have to,
So it does not pass unanimously, so it does not pass tonight, today.
of course,
So we need to take some additional action for next week.
right. I'm sorry, thank you for that reminder. I was thinking too much in a different way. So, since there was a dissenting vote, and it had to do with suspending the rules, Commissioner Wagner?
Thank you. I move to place 2023-38 and 2023-39 on the consent agenda for next week.
With the box approved?
With box approved, thank you.
I think there's a box on this one.
Yeah,
I
there
thought
is.
there
The
was.
first one there is.
Yeah, thank you.
Very well. Motion has been, well, we don't really need a,
We don't need a motion.
Right.
We'll do that at the end with everything.
right.
So that's
if-
direction that those two will be on consent, and then we'll do a.
Motion at the
one
end.
cleanup motion.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank
I was
you.
just going to get consensus from the commission that, yes, that would be okay, that they would, there's no objection to being on consent agenda. Is there any objection to it being on consent as opposed to regular for next week? Very well. 2023, 38, and 39 will appear on next week's consent agenda. Thank you for that. That now brings us to 2023, 33.
Resolution 2023-33 is the consideration of appointment of Gary Zabarak as the County Health Officer. I'll talk briefly about this. This is under state statute that every February, the commission shall appoint the director of the Public Health Center to act as the county health officer. And I believe Gary Zabarak is here this evening also.
Mrs. Zabarak, if you'd like to come forward, please, if you would like to address the commission. Otherwise, it's not required, don't get me wrong. But we certainly always enjoy hearing from you.
Gary Zabarak, Director of Public Health for Clay County. I don't have a presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions for the director? Very well. Seeing none. Counselor is not here, but it is required only that we pass it in February. I'm trying to remember the statute, and I don't have it in front of me.
You're correct. I believe, I'm not sure that it says the first meeting in February, because I'm not, that we've been consistent in that historically, but certainly in February. It needs to be passed.
What I'm getting at is that it does not require action this evening, but we can put it on for next week's agenda without any problems with the state.
As far as I know, there would not be a problem.
Okay? Anyone else wishing to comment at this time on 2023-33? Seeing none. It seems like this is an appointment that is pretty cut and dry. I would recommend consent agenda. Is that the will of the commission? Very well, then 2023-33 will appear on next meeting's consent agenda. That brings us to 2023-32. Administrator?
Resolution 2023-32 is consideration of approving a lease and service agreement with Lineage Postage Meter Quadrant Leasing USA for the Circuit Clerk's Office, and I believe Lee Bucksworth is here to provide information to the commission.
Very well.
Hello, Lee Buckstaff, Clay County Circuit Clerk. We have a postage machine that is now, I believe it's 6 years old. It will not meet the new standards of the Postal Service come next year, so we're basically out of contract. So we have a request for a cooperative agreement through Quadrant. And so we're asking for that approval. I have that built in my budget, my postage budget every year. It's basically a monthly payment of about $370 a month. I use about $60,000 of postage each year, and that's built within my budget request that has been approved.
Any
Happy to
questions?
answer any questions.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none. This involves the expenditure of county money, so I'm thinking regular agenda. Is that consistent with everyone else's thoughts? Very well, 2023-32 will appear on next week's regular agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That brings us to 2023-10, Administrator.
Resolution 2023-10 is approving the 2023 sole source vendors, and Purchasing Manager DeGroot is here to provide the commission with information.
Please proceed.
Good evening, Commissioners. Leslie DeGroot, Purchasing Agent for Clay County. This process is a little different compared to previous years. Our seasoned commissioners will know what I'm talking about. The previous process with sole source vendors and I brought a little reading packet in case anybody would like to, in their free time, read up about sole source procurement and all the fun things that are involved in sole sourcing, if you're interested. It's very informative. It came from the NASPO website, which is the National Association of State Procurement Officers. So basically what a sole source procurement is, there's not one complete common definition, but it is largely defined as a contract that we enter into with specific vendors that can only offer that product or service. So a lot of times you're going to see it in IT, in anything that requires software or maintenance upgrades periodically, and those kinds of services. So in the past, as departments determined a specific need and decided that there was one vendor that could supply that, they would fill out a sole source justification fact sheet and submit it to purchasing. We would review it all and approve it, and then send it on to the commission for you to review each sole source vendor individually. So throughout the course of 2022, you guys saw about 10 different sole source resolutions. So the way we're changing the process up this year, per statute, we are required to post an intent to purchase in newspapers. We also post on the county website, and we post on Public Purchase, which is our public procurement database, allowing anybody, it's free for vendors to register and follow Clay County and bid on anything that any commodity that matches their commodity code through an IGP. So, what we've done for 2023, we went backwards and noticed that all of the resolutions that you see for sole source are repetitive, and it was so just to roll them all up into one resolution, including any sole source vendors that were named in the last quarter of 2022. We're rolling them into 2023 for this calendar year. So any new sole source designations that aren't currently on this list will still follow the sole source justification process. And it will come to you individually, and then in February of 2024, we'll do one more resolution for all of 2024 vendors after we've consulted with each of the departments to make sure that they're still using them. I have, if you're interested, annual or spend from 2022, and I am free to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions from the commission? Yes, Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. Always got one and appreciate the presentation today. So this will be the newbie question, and I'll just put it as that.
I'm prepared.
So I've been through sole source, so I don't need to look at the book, know how that works. But as I was looking at the list of the items with this ordinance today, I understand the software piece, because many times that's proprietary, only one person's got it, we understand that. But there were a few like the smart dollar budgeting and debt reduction with Dave Ramsey, and I did his stuff 15 years ago, so I'm not saying anything wrong or bad about Dave, but I guess my overarching question, whether it's that or fire suppression equipment with the sheriff's office, is there somewhere that you would refer or something that could be included by the time we take this up, presumably next week, that would speak to the reason for the sole source? And it doesn't have to be long, but I think for anybody who just looks at that and says, well, you know, there are others that do what Dave Ramsey does, there's actually an explanation. And I don't mean to pick on Dave Ramsey for fans out there, but just it's a good example to use. So is there something that could be included maybe in next week's packet that could just kind of speak to, here's a sentence or two why, and it could be, you know, it could be anything, but as I look at that, that was called out to me anyway.
Yeah, and the reason that wasn't included, I referenced on the RCA the previous resolutions, and if you wanted to dig around in Civic Clerk, you could pull up those resolutions and see the sole source justifications for those specific things.
Yeah.
But I'll compile them all and get them all to.
Or it may be just
a
even
blurb.
referencing that or linking to that, and I'm just really speaking even more for those who maybe, you know, some people get a little nervous about sole source stuff, so just if they
Absolutely.
haven't seen that, then they don't know that, and so just some reference to that would be great.
To kind of ease some minds too, per statute, we're only required to post the notice of intent to purchase for 10 days. We did it for the entire month of December. Just to make sure, you know, because we're changing the process too, we wanted to keep it open for as long as possible for anybody to view and say, you know what, we can actually supply that. And that happened this time around. Never happened before. So one of the items that was originally on our list from last year has come off because we were made aware of another vendor.
Gotcha.
If I could speak to the fire suppression equipment.
Yeah, that was one that.
Sure, that probably stood out. So that's our cold fire that the sheriff's office used to put fire out with, you know. So there are, that is a specific proprietary product, only made available by specific distributors throughout the country. And those distributors are based regional locations. And so our regional distributor for that cold fire is, I lost Southwest Cold Fire.
Yeah, it says it all right in there. So no, that's perfect. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and like I said, I'll do a little quick thingy for you next week.
Awesome, thank you.
Any other questions? So just to clarify, are there any documents that you've requested that would be coming in?
I think
Mr.
just
Wagner?
references or you know what if I understand, since these come back to past actions that the commission has taken, really just references to those actions that then speak to why they are considered a sole source. I mean, that's really it. So I have no problem moving this forward for discussion next week because I have a feeling it's a fairly easy exercise to get.
Absolutely.
But I think one that for those who have not followed the actions that the commission's previously taken, they may have no idea that, oh yeah, this has been discussed before, and that reference I think would be helpful. So I think that can happen pretty easily. So.
Yep.
Any further questions or comments? Generally, this is the sort of thing that I would recommend go on consent. However, since it's an issue that might do well to have questions, particularly from our newer members, and there is some follow-up that was requested, I think I'd like to have this on regular agenda for next time. We've got a recommendation that would allow the conversation that Commissioner Wagner had referred to, and also would give the chance for any follow-up questions, because sole source is obviously an issue that sometimes has some controversy attached to it. So seems to be the consensus of the commission that 2023-10 would be on next week's regular agenda.
Thank you.
That brings us to 2023-34, Administrator.
Resolution 2023-34 is consideration of a term and supply contract with Penny's Concrete Incorporated and Geiger Ready Mix for concrete for the Highway Department. And Highway Administrator Terry Griffin is here to provide information.
Good afternoon, Terry Griffin, Highway Administrator. This is a request for a term and supply contract for concrete to Penny's Concrete and Geiger Ready Mix Both companies provided bid responses that meet specifications. This will be an initial one-year contract with an option for up to 4 one-year renewals. A term and supply contract, as I'm sure most of you know, allows the county departments to order necessary materials that meet specification as they are needed, knowing that the price remains fixed throughout the term of the contract. Concrete is used primarily by the Highway Department, by parks, and the golf course, but the contract can be used by any county department that needs concrete. Typically, we use concrete for bridge deck repairs, sidewalk repair or replacement on county properties, camping pads, dock anchors, slurry mix for culvert repair or replacement, CXT building pads, and trailhead repairs. In the last 5 years, the county departments have averaged over $5,800 in purchases from concrete vendors. We are asking that you approve the term and supply contract, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions for the, okay, seeing none. What would be the, because I could go either way on this thing, consent or regular? Does anybody want more discussion on this, which would be appropriate for regular, but if everybody's pretty satisfied, I'm just as well with consent. Any objections to consent? Very well. Seems to be the consensus of the commission that 2023-34 appear on the consent agenda for our next meeting. That brings us to 2023-37. Administrator?
Resolution 2023-37 is consideration of approving a supplemental agreement or for engineering services for an ARPA stormwater project with CFS Engineers. And Highway Administrator Griffin is here to provide information about this change order.
Please proceed.
Terry Griffin, Highway Administrator. Mike, could you start the PowerPoint, please? The Brushy Creek project is an ARPA stormwater infrastructure project, which includes replacing a dangerous, narrow, low-water crossing that floods and washes out with every rainfall. The engineering contract with CFS Engineering was approved by Commission in November. You may remember seeing some of these photos previously that show the condition of the low-water crossing. The photo in the top center was taken last week after we had that little skiff of snow and it started to melt. You can see that the crossing is still underwater or partially underwater after 24 hours. Debris has collected on the upstream side of the crossing, which has blocked the culvert pipes that are supposed to allow the stormwater to run through and has caused additional backups. This photo shows the road approach from the north side of the low water crossing. You can see here that the road curves to the left and then back almost in the distance there's a bush where it curves back to the right. You drive a further down the road, get almost to the bush, you still cannot see the low water crossing as the road curves further back to the right. And only when you get really close to the crossing itself can you actually see that the crossing is low and narrow and could be a problem if it's covered with water. It's also possible, if you look at this photo, to see some of the drop from the top of the hill in the photo where the red barn is down to the low water crossing. And between the curves at both ends of the bridge and the drop, it's a rather difficult roadway to navigate. Here's an aerial view of the roadway. You can see the sharp curves on the right are the south approach to the low water crossing, and you can see the less sharp curve on the left side, that is the north side. This is an approximation of where the new roadway line will need to go in order to soften those curves and make it a straighter road so that it's easier to navigate. And because of the way the new roadway will need to be aligned and the new stormwater structure will need to be installed, we will need to request additional right-of-way. And in order to do that, of course, we need to have the engineering company complete the field survey work and prepare the documents that are necessary to obtain the right-of-way. The cost for this is an additional $5,500 to CFS Engineering, and that will let us continue with the project. I'll be glad to answer any questions about this that the Commissioner may have.
Questions or comments?
Yeah.
Commissioner Withington.
Yeah, I just want to say I think this is a good project. I think it's a worthy investment. When I was on the campaign trail, one of the local residents took me to look at this, and it was pretty embarrassing. So first-class county, we deserve first-class infrastructure. So I'm glad to see we're making this a priority. And
Thank you.
yeah.
Further comments or questions? Seeing none. I guess the only comment I would have is you could take that picture and put different roadsides on it, and we have a number of issues like that we need to take care of, and I'm very happy that you and staff and the department are working so hard to start rectifying these. It takes time, one project at a time, we get them done. So certainly, I would like to tell you how much we appreciate the fact that you're doing something to deal with these problems that are out there in the county.
Thank you, and let me say, we appreciate the support that we have from the commission in terms of getting these projects done as well. It's greatly appreciated.
If there's no further questions, my recommendation would be regular, since this involves the expenditure of money. Good with everybody? 2023-37 will be on next week's regular agenda. Thank you very much. 2023-31, Administrator.
Resolution 2023-31 is consideration of approving a professional services contract with Sapphire LLC for the website consulting and design of our tourism website. And I'd like to introduce, some of you may not have met yet, our new tourism and marketing coordinator, Megan Schaufel.
Thanks, Diana. Megan Schaufel, Tourism and Marketing Coordinator. As mentioned, this is a request to award RFP 70-22 to Sapphire LLC for website design services. Why should we award the contract? Well, currently tourism does not have an active website. So the issue is we do have several community sites such as Visit KC that are forwarding to nothing right now. So we hope to get that resurrected soon. Previously, a $10,500 grant was applied through ARPA and it was awarded for this project. Sapphire did come in under that budget. Features such as responsive design, social integration, fully compliant ADA accessibility would be extremely beneficial to our users that visit the site. Sapphire also has over 20 years in the industry and a proven track record working with both public and private sectors. We feel pretty confident in their abilities. With the 20 vendors that provided proposals, it was concluded that Sapphire has the best experience, expertise, cost efficiency, and reliability to complete the job. My hope is that with Sapphire we can turn this current message into something a little bit better, something like this or thereabouts.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate getting a look at this, and on sort of a larger view of the issue, this gives us the chance to start our journey towards qualifying for being a state-designated tourism destination, which is certainly would allow us more funding to be able to promote Clay County as a tourism destination. So certainly we are headed the right direction. And I think we need to, as we go along, further discuss the trajectory of how it is we want to promote tourism in this county, so that we can make other policies kind of dovetail into this effort. So appreciate the information. Comments, Commissioner Wagner?
Thank you very much. First of all, congratulations and my condolences. You'll probably need both through your tenure. But on a more serious question, and this may be really pushing it, but of course one of the big next events that we have in Kansas City is the NFL Draft. Any chance that we will have anything that might come up to take advantage of that opportunity?
So I have already been working in the background to kind of mock up a few of the pages, like the landing page, and how to lay out some of the other pages. The good news is we do have access to the previous content, so we can pull it over. My hope is that the build goes fairly quickly. I have been in contact with other resources as far as the ongoings with the draft and what Clay County can do as far as our representation to attain some of that tourism activity that goes by here.
Well, I know a lot of things will be focused through Visit KC, and just the ability to link over to us, even
Right.
that small thing, I think would give tremendous dividends. So whatever you can do, push. All
trying.
right, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner Carpenter?
I just want to say, glad you're in the role, Megan, and I hope that we can turn the boat around in terms of tourism and get us into the best possible place. With the contract with Sapphire, are they looking for any ongoing sort of maintenance cost as well?
Sure. With any website, there is a hosting fee that goes along with that. I mean, you have to have a place to park your website. So their hosting fee is, I want to say it's in the ballpark between around $450 a month, which is pretty standard for the industry.
And does that come with ongoing sort of updating and maintenance work, or that's
That is
just?
hosting.
Gotcha.
But we do have full control of the back-end access. So I will be responsible for updating. My envision is, part of that homepage is going to be updated regularly with new and exciting things coming to the area. I just kind of threw a temporary one of the 50th anniversary of Worlds of Fun. I think that's important and exciting. That's my role in tourism, is to make sure that we do continually have fresh content there, and I'll have full access to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Further comments or questions? Very well. With that, since it involves the expenditure of funds, this would be appropriate for regular agenda next week. Is that good with the other commissioners? I see consensus. I see head nods. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That brings us to 2023-35. Administrator?
Resolution 2023-35 is consideration of approving a professional services contract with Columbia Capital Management for financial advisor services. And so I will talk about this particular item. Back in 2014, the Securities Exchange Commission really implemented some new rules and standards when it comes to municipal financial advisors. And the recommendation to municipal entities is to separate the function between financial advisor and underwriter, so that a financial advisor is truly representing their client. And so there's not a conflict potentially of a vendor doing the same services, of being a financial advisor and the underwriter to sell the bonds, because sometimes those can come in conflict. And so I would also note that in the state audit that we received back in 2022, that was one of the items that was noted by the state auditor, that the Clay County needed to separate those functions and have a financial advisor separate from our underwriters. So with that, we went and created a RFP for services and submitted that and selected and received proposals. We received 5 proposals from various financial advisor entities from across the metro, and one that was also located in St. Louis. So we put together a review committee that consisted of the county auditor, also the county's bond counsel, Gilmore and Bell, and myself, to review those proposals, and rated all the proposals, and came down to our top 3 candidates, which we brought in then for interviews, and rated those proposals in the interviews, basically, certainly on their experience and their expertise, their project approach in working with this. So not only is the function of the financial advisor in our RFP to certainly serve in those times when the county may be issuing debt of some format, but also to work with the county as a financial advisor in developing financial policies and procedures when it comes to investment policies, cash management policies, fund balance policies, all of those financial policies the county does not have formal policies to consider. So they'll be working with us, bringing their expertise and recommendations as they work with staff to develop some proposals and policies to bring forward to the commission. One of the other components that we were interested in getting a financial advisor on board is we know we have some major projects coming forward for consideration, which we're going to have to look at some financial mechanisms, whether it's building a new detention facility or doing major improvements there, building a new courthouse or doing major improvements there. And so having a financial advisor that is along with staff and the commissioners are looking at our options and what is the best way to fund those projects and looking long-term. So all that was taken into consideration, and so before you is staff's recommendation to award the services to Columbia Capital. I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Excuse me, are there any questions? Commissioner Lawson?
Yeah. The only question I have, what do we do today Do we have somebody that does this kind of thing for us today at all?
No, we don't have a true financial advisor. In the county's past, when we have done and issued debt, the certificates of participation, we did use a provider that was also an underwriter. So, and that was noted by the state auditor
Okay.
that needed to be separated. Now, that company that we've used in the past was also one of the proposals that was submitted.
Okay, but this one, I was just looking at the fee schedule, and I appreciate the bond, for the bond, but it looks like if it's not something related to that, it's $250 hourly rate for consulting work, non-transaction related services.
Right,
Is that
and so
about?
those would only be used at those times that we would actually use them for services. So it'd be on an as-needed basis. But certainly when we're issuing debt, then that is also part of when you look at debt issuance costs.
Okay. But we have nobody that does this today. This is kind of like a new encounter for us to have this kind of support.
That is correct. Again, I would say in the past, the county has used a vendor, but when we issued debt, that's the only time that I know of that they were involved. And they were also, as I said, an underwriter. So again, we're abiding by the state auditor's recommendation to separate those services.
Oh, okay.
Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you, and I appreciate the question of my colleague, because I would assume that you would use them whenever you have debt issuance. But if I also heard what you said earlier, Diana, I would also expect a little bit of upfront work to essentially look at, here's how the county does its financial stuff, and represent or suggest things that we should be doing, whether it's policy changes or other things that would be consistent with a well-run county financially, I'll say it that way.
Best practices.
Best
That's
practices,
exactly
thank you,
right.
yeah.
So, many of the policies I referenced, we do not have. Now, from a staff perspective, we will draw up drafts, right? So we're going to do a lot of the work ourselves, but then it's a matter of then bringing in our financial advisor, to look at it from their perspective, and have we missed anything when it comes to best practices that we may not be aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Out of curiosity, because you mentioned that this was one of the items brought up during the state audit, I've not looked at, shame on me, I haven't looked at the dashboard lately, but we have got to be coming close to having dealt with we've already dealt with the vast majority. Are we closing in on complying with the suggestions made by the state audit?
That's correct. The dashboard is out on the county's website on the status of those recommendations. And as what we promised to the public is we would update that every 6 months. The second update is out there now. And the last time that we updated it, there were still 5 recommendations that were under development that I would say we would not mark as complete, but certainly are being worked on. And we will be doing an update in the next few months.
The other thing that I would note, and it is a point that was touched on by the previous commissioner comments, and that is that we are at a point in this county where we are growing. We obviously have reached, over the 250,000 citizen mark. We have a new constitution, obviously a broader commission. It feels like this is part of the natural progression of becoming a more professional county, and one that is really pretty much performing at where we ought to. So we're really kind of, I guess for lack of a better way to say it, we're growing up a little bit. It's a little bit like getting your first checking account when you're a kid, but we seem to be making good progress towards being the kind of professionally run county that the citizens certainly expect from us. Further comments or questions? Okay, seeing none. We want to put this on regular so we have a chance for any further questions. Does that sound reasonable to everybody? Very well. 2023-35 will appear on regular for our next meeting. That brings us to a couple, they're not companion items, but they are certainly related items, and we'll start with 2023-43.
Resolution 2023-43 is consideration of the appointment to the Airport Advisory Board. There are two names proposed, Todd Crosley and Robert Wright. These are both reappointments by recommendation by Presiding Commissioner Nolte. Their terms would expire December 31st, 2024.
Thank you. This, as well as the subsequent ones, subsequent nominations, are people who are already serving in those capacities and have asked to be reappointed. I always ask that these be put on regular agenda because I think it's appropriate for commissioners to have the ability to research these more on their own, while certainly commissioners have had the chance to look over the material submitted. In my opinion, it's just good practice to give an additional week. There is no hurry, with the exception of if we had a commission that was lacking a quorum and, some unusual circumstance. We just heard some citizen comment on the airport. I think this is an issue that we need to make sure that we are putting our best foot forward on. In my opinion, both the individuals nominated are engaged and working hard to make sure that they are giving the advice and thought process, forwarding it to the commissioners that is necessary for us to have a professionally run airport. And I think these two members in particular have been good adds, but we have a good board up there, and I think continuing that process is in the best interest of the county. With that, I'll go ahead and ask any questions of me. We have at least one individual here who has been nominated, and as always, nominees or applicants certainly have the option of either speaking or not speaking before the commission. But with that, are there any questions of me on these two nominees? Commissioner Johnson.
Quick question, does it matter what district they live in?
What
Western or Eastern?
Western, it should be on the application, actually.
No, it is, I'm just wondering if it matters.
Does it matter?
Yeah.
It does in some cases, though. What's going on is that is a sort of a general form, and there are, on this particular commission, it doesn't really play into it, but there are a variety of other commissions where it is required that there be a balance between different areas. And so in those points, we will certainly want to point them out. In this particular instance, it is not a qualification.
The reason why I asked is all of the applicants on all of these boards that you're talking about, not just the airport, but all of them, they're all, it says Western, but they're not in Western. So I don't know if there's a defaults to Western, or actually one of them doesn't even have that question in their application. I just wondered why that was like that, if that was just, if it mattered at all.
Go ahead.
If I could, and I'm going to preface this, but it's either in the Constitution or it is in the Code of Ordinances that the objective is that the boards be equally represented by East and West, except for certain ones by statute, which has to do more with zoning and planning and development, because of more is represented from the Eastern Division because that's where the undeveloped land is. So that's part of the reasoning behind that, is trying to balance the board's total makeup, that 50% of the representatives are from the East and 15% are from the West. And it's not pre-populated. I think the applicant goes in on the application and fills in their district, whether they're east or west. And I will say that staff, we do not double check that when we submit that to see if that is correct or not. Because it's very easy sometimes, and we did some redistricting where individuals may not be clear whether they're in the east or the west.
Yeah, I guess everybody wants to live in the West.
Well, there's a great reason to live in the Western District, I will say. But I will note, to the comment that was just made, I am looking at one of the applicants who did say they live in the Western, but they do not. They live in Eastern. Yeah, so sometimes people just don't even know where they live. So this one, they may want to be in the Western District, but they are with you, my colleague.
So yeah, there's several that are like that, and that's why I wonder if it was a default thing on there. And one of them is actually just eliminated. That question is eliminated from the application. So I didn't know if it mattered or not. And if it matters for numbers, then just be aware of that.
Very well.
It's, I think it's certainly we strive for.
Further
And my
questions?
last
Yes.
comment, we've had some people sitting here for 2.5 hours now. Are we going to require them to come back again next week and do this again?
You mean for the boards and commissions?
Yes.
Yes. Well, they don't have to be here. Certainly, they don't have to be here. The thing is, there's very little controversy, but a lot of these boards and commissions, some of them, not this one in particular, but many of them, let's see, DDRB, yes, which is the next one, that board does, in fact, oversee the expenditure of a considerable amount of money. So I think it's best to give commissioners the most input possible on these, because these are not presiding commissioner boards and commissions, these are commission boards and commissions, and it's been the habit, and I think a good one, to allow the most input possible from commissioners. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you. I will ask the one question I ask every time with the boards and commissions. Was there any other applicants that came forward? I know these are reappointments and they do a terrific job, but I just want to make sure, was there any other ones that came forward we need to have?
None that I was aware of. Did we get any other applications in, Administrator? I was not aware of any.
Yes, I believe that we may have other applications that have submitted an interest in the airport board.
Well, I'm sorry, yes, there was one other one now that you mentioned it. I'd forgotten about that one. I apologize. Yes, there was. And like I say, one of the reasons that I wanted to reappoint these is I think we've got enough going on up there to where we need to have the experienced people.
No, I think that's terrific. Like I said, I think our reappointments are wonderful, but could we just ask to have all applications sent to all commissioners?
And actually, I'm working with the administrator to revamp that a little bit to where we are a little bit more, at the beginning part of the process, able to solicit maybe some more applications. That's a good point, and it is one of, obviously, that you've brought up in the past, and it's a very valid point. Commissioner Withington.
Is it possible to move these up on the agenda so they don't have to sit here for 2.5 hours?
I thought about that at the time, yes. The appropriate time to have done that would have been during approval of the agenda process.
But, so for next week, can we have our administrator put this towards the top? So
Yes, I think that would be a good
I
courtesy.
think they're probably busy and they don't want to sit here and listen
Well,
to
and
us.
part of the reason that they were at the end of the, was that I wanted to make sure we had applications in on everybody, and so there was, I believe, at least one that was not quite, I might be mistaken on that, but we wanted to make sure we had the paperwork, and so that made them a bit of a late entry.
Okay,
So,
I just want to save them some time.
yeah, in fact, that's a good practice that we need to be continuing to work on. Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you, and sorry for not asking these before. Two quick questions. One is, do commissioners, or do members of these commissions serve until replaced? And then the second question is, as far as length of term. And the reason I'm asking is, if they serve until replaced, then I tend to think they don't necessarily have to come to a second meeting because they're there until they're not, right? So if they know kind of where we're headed, they at least have some assurance. But the other, it kind of gets to the comment that was made about people who are doing a good job serving well. If I understand something that was said earlier, these are year-long appointments?
They vary. The terms for the airport board, because like I say, my screen is not.
This one's two.
This one, they vary depending on the board.
Okay, and I that's probably then a discussion for another time, but institutional memory I find to be very important. You always want new, but you also, especially when you've got an issue, that institutional memory is helpful. So thank you, I appreciate that information.
And as far as the question about will they have to wait next week, generally when we have the initial reading of the nominees, if there's not a problem, and generally there is not, it's very seldom that we have a lot of controversy. While they're always welcome to show up, they don't need to. In fact, it is not required that they show up for either one. We certainly appreciate it, and we want their input. But yeah, no, it's not always required that they be here by any means. Further questions? Would the applicant like to speak?
Sure.
Since
Todd
you've been here.
Crossley.
By the way, I apologize for having you wait so
No,
long.
you're
since-
fine. Good evening and welcome, new commissioners. I'm glad you guys decided to take on the battle, and it does look like a battle. I'm glad you're doing it because I don't think I would want to. So good for you guys, and we appreciate it. I took this appointment last time because the airport's important to me. I've been a pilot for, we got to count, 26 years. I've been a tenant at that airport since 1999. My dad was on the original commission to build the airport. And a big part of why I wanted to stay in the commission is to make sure the board sees, or the advisory board, how important the airport really is to the county. So we're not just a regular airport. This is a regional airport, so it was designed as a regional airport. So it's a huge benefit to the county as a whole. I think it's the only thing we have that runs in the black, if I'm correct. And the economic impact study showed huge returns from the airport to the county. So there's a lot of value in the county. And I was just thinking about when Megan, congratulations, the new gig, how important a regional airport is to tourism, especially with the NFL drafts coming. If we can get this airport listed, I mean, that's a $100,000 to $200,000 fuel weekend for that airport, if we can get the word out that the paddock's open and places can do it. It's probably pretty timely. I'm agreeing with my friends from the airport out there. The airport's in pretty bad shape. The worst I've seen it, but it's not dead. It's not going to die. It's too big of a resource. So I wanted to come before the commission and say it's important. The airport's important, and I'd like to be a part of it still. Any questions for me, I guess?
Questions of Mr. Crossley?
Just thanks for sitting through everything to get to
Yeah.
this point. Appreciate
Yeah,
that.
I learned something, right? I love Mega's new position. That's great having tourism with the county. That's good news.
There appears no other questions. And by the way, thank you for your service previously, and our condolences for what you're going to have to go through for the next 2 years. But no, seriously, it is an asset that is important, and I think we have an opportunity to start using the resource of our boards and commissions much more fully now that we are in a little different organizational place as far as the county goes. So I look very much forward to working more closely with our boards and commissions, and obviously Mr. Crossley is a prime example of the quality of people that we aspire to have serve the county in those positions. With that, 2023-43 would be on regular for next week. That brings us to 2023-44, Administrator.
Resolution 2023-44 is consideration of appointment of members to the Development Disabilities Resource Board. These are reappointments. There are two names before you, Janet White and Alan Naylor. Their terms would expire January 31st, 2026.
Once again, reappointments, and my thought was to only nominate reappointments at this right now because of the fact that we are just getting off of our budget discussions, and I thought when we get to something that is maybe a little, has a little bit more going on it, that we would want to start talking about new members, because there are a number of new boards that do have members. As I pointed out to Commissioner Johnson, DDRB spends money, Developmental Disabilities Resource Board. This is also a board that has some different requirements to it. In other words, there are a certain number of people to serve on this board who have a relationship, a familiar relationship with someone who has a disability. There's also the requirement for a doctor. There are different kinds of requirements. This is also an example, because I believe there's one more vacancy to come on this board, if I'm not mistaken. And just to kind of give you guys an idea of how the process works as far as my part of it goes, I meet with the chair and hopefully maybe another board member or two. We talk about what it is they require. There are obviously objective requirements that must be fulfilled in these positions. But I also inquire as to what type of talents that they have. For instance, if someone on the board has financial experience that is particularly valuable, I try to, when I'm looking at the applications, think in terms of someone who has that ability to fill that. So I try to get some feedback from that board and commission to make sure that we are, for instance, not loading it up with lawyers just as a matter of not checking it out. So it's to keep a good, well-rounded team. And like I said, these two members are there. Like I said, I believe there is another vacancy, and I will be meeting with the chair and I believe Rick White's the treasurer. So I'll be meeting with a couple of those members, trying to get what it is that they need as far as somebody, what their talent profile would be. And also, if they have some specific names that they would like to put before the commission, then go there. Once we get past this first flight, I want to be a little bit more interactive with the commissioners as far as a bit more upfront work on that. Hopefully, and we can get into this later, but I would like to, at some point, publish a calendar that would have all of our boards and commissions, their expiration dates, so the commissioners would have the maximum amount of time to consider, and also if they have a person who would be a good nominee so that they could also participate in that way. But that's something we're going to work through a bit. But that's, like I say, why I wanted to just do reappointments this time, because I wanted a bit of a fresh start when we start putting new members on some of these boards. The question came up, I think, about the length of service that and members on these boards and commissions do serve until, even if their term has expired, they serve, generally speaking, until they are either replaced or until they are not qualified. For instance, if a member were to relocate and move out of the county, that would obviously create a vacancy. So until they either leave or are replaced, they still have that seat until we act. With that, are there any questions on these two nominees? Very good. We will, and I don't believe either of them are here this evening, that we will put that on for regular, if that's the pleasure of the commission. And that brings us to our final one, which is 2023-45. Administrator?
Resolution 2023-45 is appointment to the Board of Equalization. There is one name proposed, Jim Rucker, which is a reappointment. The term would expire December 31st, 2025.
This is a three-person board. What the Board of Equalization does, for those who may not be familiar, they hear the appeals of property taxes. And they become active, obviously, when that information is sent out to citizens. It is a three-member board, and they serve for 3 terms. So every year one of the members come up, so it circulates, it rotates in that manner. Mr. Rudker has completed his first term, so he is an incumbent from that point of view. We're looking for people for that who have a familiarity and a good deal of knowledge when it comes to real estate and how those taxes are levied. So that's what we are looking at in those particular applicants. So Jim Rucker is someone who has gotten, very much universal praise in his working on that particularly sometimes controversial committee. As you can well imagine, life is not always smooth for the Board of Equalization when it comes time for the citizens to come forward. So with that, are there any questions, comments? Very well. With that, 2023-45 would appear on our regular agenda at our next meeting. And that brings us to the end of our regular agenda. Excuse me? Yeah, that'll be on the discussion, yeah. And that'll be our next, no problem. That'll be our next item. With that, is there a motion related to this week's regular agenda? Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. I move that 2023-38, 2023-39, 2023-33, and 2023-34 be placed on the consent agenda, and that 2023-32, 2023-10, 2023-37, 2023-31, 2023-35, 2023-43, 2023-44, and 2023-45 be placed on the regular agenda for next week.
Motion has been for the distribution of those items that appeared on our regular agenda to appear on the both regular and consent agenda for our next meeting. Discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Wagner.
Aye.
Commissioner Withington.
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson.
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
And that brings us to our discussion items. We will just go ahead and motor through these last couple of items unless someone wants to take a moment to stand at ease. But I think I'd like to go ahead and get through these as quickly as possible. Is that the consensus? Very well. Discussion. First item is the Arts KC Regional Council Administrator.
Thank you, Commissioners. We have a great presentation before us this evening by Brandon Harrelson, which is with the Arts KC Regional Council, and G.K. Callahan, who's with the MU Extension. This presentation is on the Art Asset Map project. That was actually a ARPA-funded project, which was presented to the commissioners early last year, and funding was allocated to that. And so they're here this evening to give you a presentation on the status of that project.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. I'm Brandon Harrelson, Senior Manager of Public Policy and Government Relations with Arts KC. It's good to see familiar faces when we started this project, and welcome you all new faces and congratulate you on your elections. I promise that we'll talk fast because I know that it's already been a long meeting. If this works. Yeah, okay. So just really briefly about who Arts KC is. We're the Regional Arts Council serving 5 counties of our KC metro region: Clay, Jackson, Platte, and Moe, Johnson, and Wyandotte in Kansas. We serve both the nonprofit and for-profit sector of the creative industries through promotion, support, and advocacy. That's various ways. ArtsKCGo.com, which is the largest events platform for the arts in the area, our social media marketing capacity program, and other things listed there. We've been in service since 1999. So this project overall, we approached the county for some ARPA funding totaling $20,000 to do asset mapping for the county, the arts and creative industries of the counties. For those who aren't familiar, asset mapping is exactly what it sounds like. You map out the assets in a certain area of a particular industry you're trying to find. Arts KC requested the funding. We have been working with the MU Extension team for a while. They designed and implemented their data collection plan, cultivated and analyzed that data, created the map that we'll show you this evening, and we're presenting that to you today. And looking towards the future, we have a larger dashboard project that I will briefly mention with you today.
And I just want to say I'm G.K. Callahan with MU Extension, that the arts and entertainment industry is the 3rd largest employer, and I know it's on the slide, but I think that's why it's important to Clay County, and I really just want to point that out. For our metro, the arts, it brings in a lot of dollars to family households.
And we'll talk a little bit more about a study that we're doing right now to tell you exactly how much that is an impact. So.
And I'm going to go through some of this really quickly. I just put it up there in case no one had ever heard of asset mapping, but it's basically a research strength-based approach to looking at a community. So instead of going into a community and saying there's a food desert, we can say these are the things that are strong in the community. And so we really start with an asset and you build off that. And of course I can't read it. And one of the benefits of that is you're looking at the strength, but you're also helping promote community involvement and ownership in this process, right? You don't go into a community and tell them what their assets are, you let them tell you what their assets are. And so it's also a learning, especially for an institution or a municipality to go into a community. You really get to learn a lot about what the community feels is important to them.
We'll save you time. We already talked a little
okay.
about it. Yeah.
So I just want to give you a little overview of what we did during the project. So some of this data is public knowledge, right? So we have Arts KC Go data since they helped us. They're our partners in this project. You look at the ESMI data for arts industries, the IRS tax exempt data. And so we collected all that data digitally. And then we went out and we conducted focus groups. We administrated an online survey, and then we validated all those assets. The sad news I have today is Clay County does not have a lot of assets, and it's dipped down since COVID. And that is one of the things I want to bring to your attention. I think our lovely wizard behind the screen is going to help me with this part of the presentation. So we have a great platform at University of Missouri Extension called All Things Missouri. It's a great database with all kinds of free data. Any of you can access it and use it any time. It's not just arts related. So if you want to know specific census data or data about your constituents, it's all in here. And at another time, if you're interested, we can give you a tour or have a private session with you on how to access this data. Can you click on the map below, please, Mike? The Jackson County map? So that's Clay County there. And then that's our arts in our region. So if you can see, and then Mike, if you can go to the add data section, please. So I'm just going to give you a quick example. And one of the things that we've known for a while in this county, but this study really helped drive it home, is Clay County is a very wealthy county with a pretty high medium income, household income. But almost all of your money that goes to arts-related activity leaves this county and goes to Jackson County. And as you can see in this map, Mike, if you scroll down on the bar on the right, please, sir, that's the medium household income there. And Clay County is over $70,000 per household income. This is stats of 2020, obviously, 2016 to 2020. But below it, that's Jackson County, but that's where all your arts infrastructure is. So if you want to go to the play, the ballet, you want to go buy something at a gallery, you're going to take their household and out of this county and go spend it in Jackson County. And that's just something I think is really important for the commission to understand. And we'd like to help change that. Thank you, Mike. This is a slide I wanted to throw up really quick. In addition to this study here, Arts KC is part of a larger study that I'll let Brandon talk about really quick.
Sure. So you see there it says Arts and Economic Prosperity 5. Well, we're currently in the Arts and Economic Prosperity 6 cultivation at the moment. It occurs every 5 years. The numbers that you see represented there are from 2015. And so if you can see, it's kind of small. Does this have a pointer? Yeah. 368 art-related businesses employ 1,695 people. That's pre-COVID. So you can see the significant loss as a result of COVID. But we will be publishing the findings that we have from the Arts and Economic Prosperity 6 study once we're finished with that. In previous years, we've gotten one report of KCMO, one report of the region, and so we have no delineation after that. But this year, Arts KC is paying to have a report of Clay County, Jackson County, all the 5 counties, plus KCMO. So we'll be able to tell you exactly what the arts economic activity is right here in Clay County. So what happens next? So we're currently collecting data if we finish this in Clay, Jackson, we have an ongoing project with them. Wyandotte, we're beginning, and Johnson County, we're beginning as well. We're continuing discussions in Platte County to do this very thing, this asset mapping project. As we begin to receive that data and analyze that data, we're creating a dashboard with My Sidewalk, that's a local business located in the Crossroads, to visualize all this data and say, what does this mean for our region? What does this look like region-wide as an arts and creative community? And then I mentioned the AEP 6. And it was mentioned earlier, the draft. We also are looking forward to the World Cup in 2026. What the arts and economic or creative industries can represent for the World Cup when people come in for that. We look forward to working on, already talked to Megan as we were sitting over there, to see what we can do to offer these resources for the website here, for the functionality of the new website as it's being built out, and people look to Clay County for activity and tourism. So I just want to show you really briefly what the dashboard will look like. So this is in very bare beta testing, but this is what we're going to be posting on this dashboard. It's populated currently with only Jackson County data. We're going to be adding Clay County now that we have it finished. And as we continue to work through data collection, we'll be adding it here. Mike, if you go to the demographic, go to the demographics tab. Keep scrolling down. So it's also populated with all of this other data as it relates to census information, other information that My Sidewalk has access to, which will overlay with these asset mappings. So someone can say, you know, if I live in this area of Clay County, what art assets are there? How does that relate to median household income, transportation access? One of the demographics that they have is how close we are to transportation opportunities. And using all of that information, we can figure out where are funds best utilized within a county, and how can we take away barriers from people trying to access the arts.
Well, it could also be used as a tool for workforce development. Let's say you're a local entrepreneur, you want to start a business. You can use this data to figure out a good spot to open up your business where there might be clients already. I mean, the data can tell you a lot of things.
Thank you. And then I have one more Yeah, thank you. So, can you go back to the Memphis? Thank you. This is just to show you how pretty and nice a finished dashboard looks from my sidewalk, if you've never seen one. Memphis reached out to them to talk about their downtown development. And can you go to the one that says tourism something? So, yeah, scroll down a little bit. So it just shows you a little bit of the usability and functionality of what they are capable of. I think it will look similar to this, and I think it will be a great boon to your county and to the rest of the region. Thank you, Mike. And then this is just a list, just so you know, our footprint. We've been working in Clay County for many, many years. In fiscal year 23, these were all of our grantees, totaling $74,000 in investment, and that's not even including, we're a fiscal year, so we end in June, so that's not even including the rest of the year that we have of grantees. So you might recognize some of those people and some of those organizations here in the area. Ooh, sorry.
It was just a question slide.
Oh, yeah.
So we tried to make that as quick as possible for you guys.
I appreciate that. Thank you. 'Cause it is getting a little bit late. Yeah, the obvious implications for tourism are there. How does it, and some of the things you're talking about, businesses locating, and there's a quality of life issue involved in this. How is there any other recommendations on how we would use this for economic development? I have worked in the arts pretty much for the last half of the 20th century, so I've got a pretty good soft spot in my heart for this, and I think there is, besides the aesthetics of it, there is certainly a practical application to being able to be more arts friendly.
Sure. So coming here today was to tell you this is how we spent your $20,000. This is what we created as a result of that. The next step, I would love to come back before you all once we've concluded our arts and economic prosperity study, show you how, when the dashboard is more complete and full of all of this data, that study will talk exclusively to economic prosperity, to economic development, and what the future could look like. And putting all of that together in a pretty little box with a pretty little bow via the dashboard, I think would be an excellent next step before you all as a body.
And the dashboard will be accessible for the public?
It will be free for the entire region and open to the public, something that we hope maybe as a widget can reside on the tourism website here in other counties, as well as artskcgo.com, as I mentioned, the largest arts platform, that has a widget as well, meaning you can just take it, put it on your website, and it's functional right on the website. We can certainly talk to Megan about having that be a part of your tourism website as well.
And your timeline for further progress?
Sure, so that will be done before the summer. We'll get preliminary data in the fall, and then we will do a big tour of this is what we found at this time basically next year.
Great.
So hopefully that dashboard will be complete, robust, and inclusive of all of the data we've collected so far by this time next year.
By the way, good to see you again, GK.
Nice to see you too, Gary. And separate from Arts KC, I think there are some suggestions that I wasn't planning to make this evening, but a performing arts center north of the river is something that I know a lot of communities have talked about for a long time. I mean, you want to talk about economic development and tourism, there's a really low-hanging apple right there. We had some talks with Arts KC with some local communities that are interested in sponsoring something like that, and so I think that's something that we could work with the commission on having a further conversation.
That is something that we are lacking here in the Northland.
The other thing too is working with your new tourism director. There's this idea of working regionally. I sit on many planning boards for different festivals and things that happen right here in Liberty, and if those people got together and pulled their resources so they could hire PR firms and or marketing together, I think that's a way in working with their tourist department. So I think there is some suggestions we could make that have come out of this process of just being in the community and hearing what some of the needs are.
That'd be great. Commissioner Lawson.
Yeah, the only thing I was wondering, Diana, since we have our new marketing person, is she someone who would kind of work with them and see how this can play into Clay County development and?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and as an example, we do that already with the KCMO,
Sure.
their marketing public information officer, as well as Jackson County, Wyandotte County. So our part of our mission is to provide that same service in all parts of our 5-county region.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation, and I appreciate you listing the Northland Symphony. My sister has worked for them for many, many years, And so I appreciate your ongoing support to them. From that experience, I know when we speak about venues, basically you've got high schools. That's where they can go when it comes to the Northland. Churches
like that,
and that sort of thing, which then begs the observation that was made about some sort of performing facility. But whether it's that or anything else, my question really lends itself to the analysis of the financial support that is possible from the county or even the Northland in general. I would suggest that even though we have a high average as far as incomes are concerned, that is different than converting them into those who will support the arts, whether it's on an operational basis or on a capital basis. And so, and maybe I missed it, and that's why I'm going to ask what may be a repetitive question, but within that analysis, are you able to tell who is currently spending, and not necessarily by name, but to give an idea of here is who is spending in the arts now, knowing that they are supporting venues and organizations in Jackson County, and they've been around for a while, so we understand that. But it seems to me the ability to be able to prop up organizations, whether they're the Northland Symphony or anybody else, or to even consider facilities that go beyond what North Kansas City High School can offer. And by the way, it's a great facility, but not exactly what we're talking about here. Right. That requires at least some thinking as far as what is the ability, and then you can get to what is the appetite to financially support those things. So can you kind of speak to that and whether you will contemplate those issues, and if so, how you will contemplate those issues?
Of course, sir. Well, to start, this particular asset mapping was really trying to look to find hidden gems, and also partly in fun to help Arts KC bring more money back to this county, because they know this is one of the counties they serve. So we weren't necessarily looking at that exact data that you're talking about, though I think it's possible to pull some data like that.
To your point, okay, so as GK mentioned, this asset mapping is to find out what's here, right? What pieces are here already? The Arts and Economic Prosperity Study that Arts KC is doing and footing the bill for, the surveys that we collect to create that data or to find that data talk specifically about how much did you spend to attend this event tonight, what's your zip code, where'd you come from, how far did you travel, what's your income level, various demographic informations like that. So we can see where is the propensity of funds being spent, not just related to the arts, but to the food industry, to the hospitality industry in an area. And doing those surveys here in Clay County, we'll get an understanding of those who are attending arts events here in Clay County. Are they from the area? Are they from outside the area? Are they spending money at local restaurants? Are they, are they staying at a hotel or something nearby? And since we have the rest of the region that we're collecting, what is that like as it relates to Jackson, Wyandotte County, other counties in the area, to see the kind of transient nature of who's attending what and where? And kind of the 50,000 foot view, I think, too, is once we've accomplished that, once we come back and talk to you all, what negotiations can we have and discussions can we have about what can the county do to better support the arts financially or via other resources to make that spending occur more here in the county, and even to the point of, when you go to the Crossroads, we're stationed in the Crossroads in Casey Mo. Every dollar that we spend at a business there has some amount of tax that goes specifically to the arts industry in that area, or it's called something else, but creative industries tax or something. Is that something that we want to try to some small degree up here in Clay County to begin with? So while this doesn't make any proposals like that or make any recommendations in that way, I think it's a first step in the process that we could very much factor in with that.
Well, we just passed a budget last week, so hold off on that money question for a while, if you would.
We don't have the data ready.
Thank you.
I had a pretty intense budget conversation at another county on Monday, so
Got it. Well, I will recognize, though, that I think part of our issue up here is marketing. I think there's a large number of people who are arts supporters that may not be aware of what we have up here, and so I think that point is well taken as far as that marketing piece.
And a whole pillar of Arts KC's mission is to affect that very area, so we look forward to working with the new dedicated staff for that very reason.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank
And
you.
I'm going to make one last plug just for the university, because I have your attention. We just posted a new position. We're hiring through our community development department, but it's going to be a placemaking position. So it's going to look at issues like this, and it's going to serve the greater Kansas City area, so Clay, Platte, and Jackson County. So be on the lookout for some new faces, but also, if you know someone who's interested, please contact me.
So thank you. This sounds like it'll be a valuable tool in attracting those types of, like I said, what we need up here, one of the things we need is an actors equity compliant venue, performing venue. That kind of thing would be, I think, a good attraction to get people up here.
Well, thank you for your funding and thank you for your attention tonight.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Seeing none, that brings us to our next item under discussion. Administrator?
Yes, we have consideration of discussion about roadway honorary dedication. This is brought forward by Commissioner Withington, and you should find some information at your place setting that I believe he will want to talk about.
Please proceed.
All right, thank you. So I propose to put up honorary street signs along Jesse James Farm Road, Northwest 164th Street. You'll see that right here, and honorary street sign for Charlie Broomfield. I think most of the commissioners know who Charlie is, but for those who don't, Charlie's a lifelong Clay County resident, born in Harlem, the historic Harlem neighborhood. For those of you who don't know where Harlem is, it's down by the downtown airport. After that, he went on to earn a degree in history from William Jewell College. He taught at North Kansas City High School for 4 years, history. After that, he began his political career in 1965, where he served 4 terms in the state legislature. After that, he almost became a United States congressman. He narrowly lost to Jerry Litton. But then in 1974, he ran for, they were called county judges, not county commissioners at the time. So he ran for Western Clay County judge, and he won that position 7 times. So he served a total of 14 years as a county judge / commissioner. And during that time on the commission, he was instrumental in the building of Smithville Lake and the Clay County Courthouse and jail across the street. He also was one of the people who arranged for the acquisition of Jesse James Farm from Jesse's grandson, Lawrence Barr. And he currently serves as the vice president of the James Preservation Trust. And he's been appointed to he was on the Parks Advisory Board here in Clay County. He was on the Bicentennial Commission. And he was also appointed by the former Governor Jay Nixon to serve on the Clay County Board of Elections. So I just want to honor his commitment and service to Clay County by putting up honorary street signs along Jesse James Farm. He's like I said, he earned a degree in history. He's a huge Jesse James historian. He's friends with the James family or descendants and everything. So I talked to him, and he thinks this is a heck of an honor, and he hopes that we can vote for it and approve it. So.
Very good. And as you pointed out, yes, he was a member of our Bicentennial Commission, which he went through essentially the process that we started with a couple of other people just a few moments ago. I think this is a great thing. And my understanding is the signs will be of nominal cost because we can do them in-house. So we've got, we can honor him and make sure that he understands that he's appreciated by the citizens and by the current government of Clay County. Let's go ahead and discuss that a little bit. Then what I'm going to want to know is kind of what the next steps are. Do we need are we going to need to put a resolution together? But let's go ahead and do just a little round robin really quick on those who would care to comment, and then drill down on the actual application of the motion.
I love Charlie. He's a character and a half. And when we first moved out in the country in Clay County, the gentleman who developed the property around us, he didn't bother to fix the road. He just built the house, sold them, and left. And so we came in talked to the judges, and being one of them, he was right there. Charlie was ready to help. The next day, he came up our road sideways because it was a mud pit. And he came up there to look at the road and make sure every stop, talk to us. Didn't know us from Adam. We hadn't contributed to a campaign. We were just a couple that didn't have anything and were excited to have our first house. So I've always admired him for doing that. He got onto that developer quickly, and about 2 days later, here came our gravel up the road. We were so thankful for it. But I found that when you ran into him, whether you were in a room full of wealthy people or you were in a room full of farmers, he treated everybody the same. Just a true gentleman and a real character. That's what I liked about him the most. He was a quirky kind of a guy, but he was great and he did a darn good job. So I'm excited that if we get the chance to honor Charlie, I'm right there with you.
Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you very much. Well, I can't say more than what my colleague just said, so I won't even try, other than he is very deserving. Yeah, I know, keep me in place. This is really more of an in-the-weeds kind of question, because I note in the map where we are looking at proposed sign locations, when I used to do these sorts of things in Kansas City, they were usually at intersections where you already had road signage there, and then you would just attach them. So I guess my question is, are we really placing them at Old BB and at Jesse James Farm Road, or are we going to do some freestanding things? There you go.
And I'll actually defer to Deputy County Administrator Walters, who put this together, but I believe my conversation with him is these would be freestanding poles that we really do not attach these types of signage to our street signs.
Oh,
That's
okay.
not been our policy, so these would be individual
I
signs.
see.
But
I only ask because
I'll
that's
turn
what
it over to Carl.
That's what they do in Kansas City, so that's why I
Well,
question.
we're not sure Kansas City does everything.
Well, I'm not even going to answer that, but since Carl, you've been brought up here, I will defer to whatever sage advice you intend to
Good
deliver.
evening, Commission, Deputy County Administrator Carl Walters. Reason being that where the stars are is, one, we're going to put 100-foot from OBB coming from the east going west, and the one we don't put on the curve because we don't want to put a blind spot for somebody coming around the curve going to the east from the west. So we moved it down a little bit from the subdivision and put it on a freestanding sign on both of them so that it doesn't reflect on anybody turn around and have an obstruction for somebody for sight distance.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Commissioner Carpenter.
I just want to say fully support adding the signs. Love Charlie. I think he's been a great resident and leader here in Clay County for many years. And I can tell you he's definitely, specifically with the Jesse James Farm and keeping the legacy of that, and also, increasing, speaking of tourism, I can tell you Charlie would have a lot of encouragement to increase the level of engagement that we have with folks from across the world, frankly, who have an interest in Jesse James and getting them to come visit the farm. He's talked to me about it many times over the years. He's given me books and other things. So if we can put up a couple of signs to honor him, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you. No, I think this is a terrific way to honor Charlie and all of his involvement here in Clay County over the years. So I'm fully in support. I'll keep it sweet, simple.
Very good. Commissioner Johnson?
So I'm going to be the only jerk up here today. Charlie Broomfield, I don't know him. He sounds like an absolutely tremendous guy. And no offense to him and no offense to my colleague over here, but I have a standing rule. I do not like naming streets after people. I just don't. I don't like honorary street. I just don't like it for a number of reasons, but I think it's too subjective. I think you leave too many people out who may deserve to. And again, this is nothing against Charlie because he sounds like a great guy and surely deserving, and nothing against my colleague, Commissioner Withington over there. But just so everybody knows in the future, anytime a name of a street comes before me, it'll always be a no vote, just because I don't think it's a good thing for us to do. That's all.
Okay. Administrator, I think we wanted, did you want, let's go ahead and hear from the administrator on how we go forward, then I'd like to go back to Commissioner Withington. So give us the roadmap on how we go forward on this.
So it sounds like there's consensus by the commission to do this. What we would recommend is coming forward at the next meeting with a resolution that makes this official by the commission. I think there's also an intent at that same meeting. There's a proclamation that's being proposed, and invite Mr. Broomfield here, to be here for receiving that proclamation, and also be here the night that the resolution would pass to formalize the dedication of this stretch of road named in honor of him.
Just because obviously he will have a number of people who will be here, and just out of a courtesy, is it possible to put that towards the top of our agenda as a courtesy to Mr. Broomfield and his family?
Absolutely, and it is always typically our goal to put anything that relates to guests at our meeting at the front of the meeting. Unfortunately, that did not work out so well today for some of our appointees, but that's always our goal.
Thank you. I realized that was the case, but I just wanted to anticipate the question. Commissioner Withington.
Yes, so I invited Charlie on the 15th at 3 o'clock. So that's the meeting that he'll be at. And just to clarify, we're not renaming the road. We're just putting up an honorary street sign. There's too big of a hassle to rename a road, so we're not really renaming a road. It's just an honorary street sign, so.
Very well. Any further discussion?
Will you write will staff write the resolution?
Yes, absolutely. Staff will write the resolution to take this formal action for the honorary name.
Okay.
And we'll have it on the 15th also. It'll be the first time you see it, but I think it's one of those action items that certainly you could do that same evening as opposed to seeing and doing it in 2 steps.
Okay, thank you.
So you're referring to immediate action?
Correct. Well, we'll actually probably put all of that under ceremonial matters, which will be that'll come up very first on the agenda because you're issuing a proclamation, and this resolution is really a ceremonial action item by the commission.
Very good. Any other questions or comments before we leave this discussion item? Seeing none. That brings us to County Administrator comments. County Administrator.
Yet just one item, Commissioners, and that is the next meeting of the commission will be next Wednesday, February the 8th at 6 p.m. here in the chambers.
Very good. Commissioner comments. Commissioner Withington. Commissioner Rawson.
The only thing I wanted to say before is that after I saw the items on the agenda and got all the letters from various people through our county administrator, various people talking about the airport and the staff and that type of thing. The one thing I wanted to, what I did, I went out, as I always do, and I met with someone that sat on the board and talked with them at great length about the airport, all of the services they could offer, how great an asset, which I've always felt it was, but what a great asset that airport could be. And I also met with a guy who just keeps his plane there that is a very active pilot. He talked about it too. Everyone says the same thing, that it is a resource that we do not want to waste. I think to the people who came today, I just want to say thank you so much, because that's what government is all about. And too often, people who have an axe to grind, say, they just go talk and complain to other people. It doesn't do a darn bit of good unless you let the government know how you feel and what you'd like to see. Can we always do exactly what people want? No, we can't. But one thing I want to say is, I think your involvement has brought a large focus to everyone to look at the airport and try to make it as successful as possible. And I think Diana's involved right now in getting some things done to get that taken care of. We ask your indulgence. We're all brand new, some of us just feeling our way. I will say that the one thing I'm very proud of about that airport is that when my husband was county commissioner, that is when the ground was broken. We have a picture of he and the other commissioners digging the first shovel of dirt. So those people saw what it could be, never dreamed it would be as good as it is. And so we want to take it on forward. Give us some time, just a little time, to try to get improvements made, get staff taken care of, all the things that need to be done. I know I am, and I think the other commissioners as well, are very supportive to get this all done. And Diana's got a plan, and we're going to go with their plan. And so hopefully that will all be satisfactory to you when it's all said and done. So thanks a million again for coming and letting us know how you feel.
Commissioner Wagner.
Well, since I know Commissioner Lawson thinks I've spoken enough today, I'm going to stop. No, I'm kidding. Other than just thanks for everybody for being here. Staff, thank you for your presentations this evening. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Carpenter. Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Johnson.
Real quickly, Commissioner Carpenter mentioned earlier about the ordinance regarding, you know what I'm talking about?
I made a note.
If council or someone could send us all a copy of that ordinance so we can read it, I would certainly like to address it. The one that basically says we don't take action today, we put it off till next week. Whatever that ordinance is, if we can all get a copy of that, because I'd like to address that. And the reason why is tonight, for example, we had 14 items on our regular agenda. 12 of them are coming back again next week. We've got 25 people in this room that are on the county payroll, getting paid by taxpayers right now to sit through this, and we're going to sit through it again next week. It's just time is money, and I think that needs to be addressed. So if we can get a look at that and maybe tackle that at some time in the future, I appreciate it.
Very good. The only comment that I have is I watched the movie Jaws recently, and there's a part of that where they're all sitting around the table in the bottom of the boat, and I think that this song expresses my sentiment. I'm tired and I want to go home. With that, we are adjourned.